has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. And
there's been a misconception that NDC is against taxation. And the propaganda has gone on to even indicate that we are nation wreckers. If we are not supporting taxation, how else do we intend to develop this nation? I want to let everybody know that NDC is not against taxation. Indeed, our philosophy is based on taxation. We believe in redistributive justice, and taxation is a means of achieving redistribution of wealth in the country. Our philosophy is hinged on the belief that once we have come together to live in one society, and we have different means, some will get rich, others will get richer, others will remain poor, whatever happens. But if we want to live in a group to ensure that everybody can have the basic needs in life, we believe that there must be taxation. And our principle of taxation is each according to his means. So those who have bigger means will pay more than those who don't have. So whilst we are supportive of taxation, we are very conscious about what type of taxation and how that taxation is implemented. Because if you put in taxation measure that works to put the greatest burden on the people who are already sinking, then you are not helping to build a welfare society. So our policy is that let us tax, but those who have the bigger means must bear the bigger portion of the taxation. And there are even people who cannot be taxed. They must be beneficiaries of the proceeds of taxation. So when it comes to government expenditure, we also believe that to each.
The Coalition of Private Transport Operators recently embarked on a sit-down strike as part of measures to compel the government to reduce fuel prices. The group says government refused to heed their concerns after 3 consecutive meetings, and therefore no commercial bus will work effective today, December 6, 2021. According to leadership of the coalition, the decision holds until the government sits with them for an amicable resolution of the impasse. Our news team visited La Paz and picked the thought of some commuters who were left unattended as a result of today's strike. Bismarck also raised concern over the seedling warrant situation and called on government to come to their aid by reducing fuel prices drastically. Others shared similar concerns.
Can I say? The sorry I see, I buy them fix your mind. Don't fix your mind as see a dama for Musmunya Juma. And not a quad, Mamma or quad man. No one to me, quad, you see no man in your scar, no man a cosso. You were attitude you mind, my seeing you now, man, you have a such a advent. I'm a put us on money, a question of a man, a coswa, young man telling my wow, you have a train. As the young baby see on man up. We wake up this morning to receive a release from commercial transport operators from Ghana, stated that all commercial
services are made available to members. The table for the record must read the head notes. What is being late? For the record, what is being late? We need it. Then copies made available to us. Then probably the leaders can make comments to it. What is being late? We need to know. You have only indicated where it is from. We need to know what is being late. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Notifications of the government's 2022 budget statement and economic policy. modifications of the government's 2022 budget statement and economic policy.
Very well. Kindly make copies available to the leaders. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, ordinarily, by our known practice and procedures, I have seen communication to the
Well, it is obvious that Alhaji and Alhaji has no size. It has become the most popular talk show in this country and has reigned for more than 10 years. Next week, on the 18th of December, we will take the program to another level. On the premises of Pan-African Television, we invite all of our patrons and general public to participate directly in Alhaji and Alhaji. Come, listen to the various contributors and make your own comments known on the state of the economy, working parliament, everything, international relations and everything. Please join us next week Saturday, the 18th of December on the Alhaji and Alhaji talk show. Come with your friends to join this discussion at the premises of Pan-African Television at Abilimbe. Join us in discussing the issues of our time.
People into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer.
Well, it is obvious that Alhaji and Alhaji has no size. It has become the most popular talk show in this country and has reigned for more than 10 years. Next week, on the 18th of December, we will take the program to another level. On the premises of Pan-African Television, we invite
He has labored, he has suffered.
A very good morning to you wherever you are. Thanks very much for joining us on Pan-African Television. We are also live on several other affiliates across the country. Let me say a big thank you to Volta One TV in Ho, and also a very big thank you to Ahunto 92.3 FM. They provided us their frequency on which we're broadcasting here in the Greater Accra region. If you like to listen through radio, there are several other radio stations through which you can listen to us. I'll be going through some of them as we go along in the show. But we are on Facebook, on Pan-African Television. That is the name of the page, Pan-African Television. Search for that and you can get to watch us. You can also watch us on YouTube. Same name, Pan-African Television. Thank you very much. If you join us via Facebook, you can share your comments with us on the discussions we'll be having today. My name is Sena. Nombo. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. Thank you very much. I hope your week has been fruitful so far. This week has been another week which has been dominated by discussions on the budget. We were looking forward to a press conference by the finance minister. When it came, he had made some concessions, some of them, and agreed to some of the things that the largest opposition, the National Democratic Congress, was demanding. But one thing he said they will not compromise on is the 1.75% e-levy. He says that they understand people's apprehension, but they do not intend to compromise on the 1.75% e-levy. And it was contained in a letter sent to Parliament that was laid on the floor on Tuesday. Well, the minority leader, Haruna Idusu, had only one response, that as long as the e-levy remains part of the budget that was sent to Parliament, they will not support the 2022 budget. But the budget is going through the committees. It will go for appropriation, and then decisions will be made on the budget. We'll be talking about the issue of the e-levy, because our Greek minister is now telling us that if you do not agree to the e-levy and you're a farmer, you're expecting free fertilizers from them under the Planting for Food and Jobs program, forget it. They need the e-levy to be able to do that. The e-levy seems capable of doing a lot of things, rules, all sorts of things that are now being placed on the e-levy. Well, we'll be discussing the electronic levy, which has become the most controversial issue in relation to the 2022 budget. And then we'll spend some time talking about the agitation of drivers over fuel prices. The drivers were in a meeting with the Jubilee House, the presidency. They said they were told that God will reduce fuel prices. God has reduced by 15%. They say it's not enough. We're expecting further deductions, not only from God, but from other filling stations, other OMC or marketing companies that they buy fuel from. Government has said clearly that they don't have any control over the pricing in those OMCs. So what will happen after the strike that actually worked, the driver's strike? What will happen if their demands are not met? Would we be seeing a much more extensive strike? We'll be talking about that and whether government is in the position to reduce fuel prices. And then we'll end with one teacher, one laptop. The teacher said the laptop is no good. They want their money back. Simple, straightforward. We'll be discussing that. Thank you very much for joining us. If you're just joining us, the Mother of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. I'm joined this morning for the discussion, starting from my left, Mr. Felix Kwachofosu, who is an aide to former President John Dramani Mahama, a former Deputy Minister for Communications. And then sitting close to him is Dr. Valentin Mensah, who is a political economist. We'll be joined shortly by Nia Boy Annan, who is a financial analyst, and then Bernard Mona, who is the convener of Justice for Ghana. They demonstrated this week over the issue of the e-levy. We'll take a short break. When we'll come back, we start a discussion on the issue of the e-levy with Mr. Felix Kwachofosu sitting right close to me. Stick and stay with us.
He's the Redeemer, and He has labored, He has suffered to lead His people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer, and He has labored, He has suffered to lead His people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer, and
hello, information. Me, I have still not got the money for that list of expensive building materials you sent to me. The price of the iron rods have been increased too much.
Madam, relax. Look, that's not why I didn't call you. I just visited IPCP, where the engineers told me everything about Trasacco fast floor.
Please, those people are expensive. Are they not the people building those big houses in town? I beg going to
Madam, in fact, I used to think the same until I visited their office today, and they gave me an estimate of how much it will cost. No, the estimate is real. It's cheaper than the one I even sent you.
Wow.
Building contractors, foremen, masons. Visit IPCP, the Trasacco Fast Floor. Engineers will assist you build an affordable, faster and stronger building.
Oh, madam. It is done.
Wow. Oh, Jesus.
Trasacco Fast Floor. Stronger, faster and affordable.
This is a Trasacco construction product.
Well, it is obvious that Alhaji and Alhaji has no size. It has become the most popular talk show in this country and has reigned for more than 10 years. Next week, on the 18th of December, we will take the program to another level. On the premises of Pan-African Television, we invite all of our patrons and general public to participate directly in Alhaji and Alhaji. Come, listen to the various contributors and make your own comments known on the state of the economy, working parliament, everything, international relations and everything. Please join us next week Saturday, the 18th of December on the Alhaji and Alhaji talk show. Come with your friends to join this discussion at the premises of Pan-African Television at Abilingwe. Join us. in discussing the issues of our time.
People into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer. And
well, welcome back from that break. Of course, your views are very important to us. Like I said, if you're watching us via Facebook, if you're watching us via YouTube, share your views, use the comment section. I'll read them out as we go along in the show. A big thank you for joining us. And let me say a big thank you to some of the affiliate stations we have across the regions. In the Volta region, we have Sena Radio, which is in Dabala. We have Shine FM, which is in Akachi, among several other affiliates. Sometimes it's difficult to recall every one of them. But Global FM in Ho is one of the stations that are taking streaming us currently. In the Uti region, we have the Hills FM, and then we have Nyawasi Radio. We have Zebs FM in Zebela. A big thank you to you, and a big thank you to Diamond FM, Radio Kitao, and of course, Bewa Radio. A big thank you to all of you. So those are some of the radio stations we are streaming on currently. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's start with the issue of the e-levy. Like I said, I start from my immediate left. Mr. Felix Kocho-Fosu, good morning.
Thank you very much, Sena, for the opportunity. It's a real pleasure to be here. Sena, you know, it is important to track back a bit to appreciate why we are having this discussion. And in order to do that, we need to develop a framework within which we hold that discussion. And that framework is underpinned by just 3 questions. First of all, where are we as a country in terms of our economy? How have we arrived here? And where are we going? These are the 3 main questions that should underpin any discussion about the budget, which has become very, very dominant. Indeed, I do not recall the last time that the budget dominated public discussions for several weeks running. When I was much younger, I recall that Dr. Kwesi Botry would appear on national television and read the budget and indicate the price of key commodities, and that would be it. Whatever discussions followed would be merely academic, and various interest groups would also air their opinion. When we entered the democratic dispensation since 1992, the former changed a bit. Now, our laws required that finance ministers go to parliament to present the budget to our parliamentarians, following which a series of processes are undertaken, and then the budget is approved. Then we get on with our lives. So we've had budgets, some have generated debates, but by and large they have not been eventful. But this particular budget is by far and away the most controversial that has been read under the Fourth Republic, and it is not for any reason that the situation is like this, other than the fact that people have taken a keen interest in the effects of the policies and programs contained in the budget. So for the first time, you see people displaying enormous understanding of the issues contained in the budget. People are not intimidated by the jargons, and they appear to even appreciate the jargons and expressions and economic terms used in the budget because of the level of discussion that has gone on, the level of public awareness and education that has gone on. Now, I pose the question as to where are we as a country? So now, in the last 5 years, Ghanaians have endured quite some very significant difficulties, economic difficulties. And there have been grumblings within the population, there have been grumblings within various quarters. But things came to a head last year, 2020, and then this year, because of some policy choices that this government undertook. Now, this is a government that inherited an economy that had been put in good shape by the National Democratic Congress government led by President John Dramani Mahama. You know, after the turbulence we suffered because of the energy crisis, falling commodity prices, and lower than expected oil revenue because of difficulties we had with the oil field. By the last quarter of 2016, things had begun to pick up. So you notice that many credible international financial organizations, the World Bank, the IMF, Fitch, the ratings agencies, the Economics Intelligence Unit, and seasoned financial and economic analysts predicted that based on the work that had been done, we were going to witness significant economic growth in 2017 of above 8%. It did happen because we had additional oil fields, 2 additional oil fields that increased oil production by as much as 80%, which then boosted our industrial sector by as much as 14 to 15%, and then that translated into overall economic growth of 8.1%. Simply meant that the economy was expanding. But if you want to get an accurate picture of what was happening, you just look at non-oil growth. That is all the other sectors, agric, manufacturing, services, what have you, that do not have anything to do with oil production. And the growth there was just like what we recorded in 2016. So you see that there's no significant activity happening there beyond the inflows that we derived from additional oil production from those 2 oil fields. So this government has been basking in that and seeking to profit from the work that had been done by the preceding government. So you find that there was an improvement in a number of macroeconomic indicators, not necessarily due to any significant work done by this government, but they were fruits of the labor of the previous government. Between 2018 and 2019, we began to see reckless economic management, or to put it more bluntly, economic mismanagement. And we see one of the key things that you use to assess whether the economy is being managed well or is being managed prudently is the budget deficit, the difference between your expenditure and your revenue. And it's in our daily lives, it is an accepted universal principle that if you live beyond your means, you are going to get into trouble. So the sum total of economic management boils down to this, that you must live within your means. If you live beyond your means, you are going to fall on very, very hard and difficult times. So between 2018 and 2019, we began to see that. If you check the budget deficit, the difference between our revenue and expenditure, you saw a widening gap. Whereas in 2016, with all the difficulties we had, we got only 780 million Ghana cedis in oil revenue. That's all we had. We didn't get a dime from the central bank in terms of central bank financing. The support that the central bank lends to government every now and then. We didn't get it. And other revenue streams ceased. But within what we had, we were able to achieve a budget deficit of 6.1%, which is one of the lowest in recent times. Indeed, in 2014, we did about 5%. Now, between 2018 and 2019, this deficit began to widen. So, it went to 7%, then it went to 7.5%. Because this government began to implement rather misguided consumption policies. They were putting the money available to them into expenditure that did not yield returns for the benefits of the country. Not into manufacturing, not into agriculture, not into productive sectors of the economy, but into consumption, recurrent expenditure. And they developed slogans around those things in order to create some sense of good feeling within the populace for electoral advantage. But that was essentially money that they were throwing down the drain because we could not recover it. And we are not a country that is particularly endowed financially at this moment. So when the little you get goes into consumption, you go into difficulty. If you put figures to it, between 2017 and September this year, this government in terms of revenue, tax revenue, non-tax revenue, had as much as 260 billion Ghana cedis at its disposal in the space of 5 years. That is just tax and non-tax revenue. If you add borrowing, which has increased by 220 billion Ghana cedis, we are talking in excess of 400 billion Ghana cedis in the space of 5 years. Sena, for all the 8 years that the MDC was in power, the total resource envelope, including borrowed funds, tax and non-tax revenue, was 248 billion Ghana cedis. In terms of expenditure alone, this government has done 257 billion Ghana cedis in the last 5 years, up to September this year. And yet, they have plunged this country into unprecedented economic crisis. A chunk of this expenditure has gone into consumption. Expenditure that we do not earn any returns from. Expenditure calculated to reap political benefit, not to develop the country. And that is diametrically opposite to the policies that the Mahama administration was implementing. Because our policies were geared towards developing the country and growing the economy organically. So you see the deficit widening, which gives an indication that they are spending beyond their means, and that it was going to catch up with us. We were going to get into a situation where that cycle was no longer sustainable. Then, come 2020, by March, COVID struck. Now, when COVID struck, as should have been the case with every other government in the world, what the government ought to have concentrated on was to protect Ghanaians from contracting COVID and dying in the process. That was a remedy within which government ought to have operated around COVID. But rather than seeing that government had a responsibility to protect Ghanaians, ensuring that the pandemic does not get out of control and lead to huge numbers of COVID cases and huge numbers of deaths, and perhaps offer some social protection to the vulnerable who had been impacted and affected severely because their economic activities and livelihoods thereof were severely impacted. This government saw it as another opportunity to squander scarce national resources. So whereas around the world, governments were up to their responsibility to protecting citizens, this government saw it as another bonanza to squander public funds with a view to raking in undeserved profits for individuals in their fold and their cronies. So you find that when COVID came, indeed in the budget, mid-year budget presented last year, the finance minister detailed expenditure totaling 19 billion Ghana cedis. It was at that time that we had a windfall. We got $1 billion from the IMF. We got over $100 million from the World Bank, the African Development Bank, other donor partners. The central bank extended a 10 billion Ghana cedi loan to government. When we were in power and we had that crisis, we didn't get 1 cedi from the central bank. But the central bank gave them 10 billion Ghana cedis. Indeed, there are reports that even that threshold was exceeded, and that instead of 10 billion, they actually got far more than that. But we will get the fuller picture in the course of time. All these resources amounted to 19 billion Ghana cedis. And if government concentrated on protecting Ghanaians against contracting the disease and dying, and offering social protection to the vulnerable, we wouldn't be in this state. So you find that getting towards elections, they thought that COVID had become an opportunity, a smoke screen behind which they could hide and essentially purchase the election. So they went overboard and spent scarce resources in a manner that was completely irresponsible and reckless. And the object of that was to create a feel-good factor so that people would be happy and go and vote for them, when they knew that it was not sustainable and that it was going to have a devastating impact on our economy. So the elections came through several shenanigans that I did not want to get into because of time constraints. They secured victory, but that was an election that they clearly purchased due to reckless expenditure that they should not have done. And what was the outcome? When we counted the cost after the election in 2021, we found that they had incurred a deficit of 15.6%. That is a deficit of 15.6% of GDP. And when you get that kind of deficit, you need not less than 4 to 5 years to get out of it. So it meant that they had condemned us to economic suffering for the next 5 years because of that reckless behavior. And what had happened is that because of this huge hole, coupled with excessive borrowing, they had boxed themselves into an extremely tight corner where there was no fiscal space. In other words, they simply did not have money anymore to do anything. They owed people from whom they are taking loans huge amounts of money. Our debts had reached over 300 billion Ghana cedis by the beginning of last year. The deficit of 15.6%, and they had to borrow in order to finance it. In other words, they had spent far more than they earned the previous year, and so they had to go and look for money to plug that hole before they could even start spending for the next year. And how did they think they could do that? By imposing taxes on the people of Ghana. So that's why they brought the COVID tax, the sanitation levy, increase the NHIL, increase ESLA, and all the other taxes that they imposed on us. And once they did that, you saw a manifest sense of hardships descending on the people of Ghana. So you began to hear complaints. Even though in the last 5 years people had been enjoying it, it got to an intolerable crescendo right after those raft of taxes were introduced. So complaints of hardships began, and that's where Fix the Country also jumped in, and Bernard Mona and his group also jumped in order to insist that government do something about it. And the object was that the object of those measures was to raise sufficient revenue to be able to meet expenditure, some of which were self-inflicted. And even those taxes they raised were not sufficient to plug the hole they had dug. What had happened was that if you check the 2021 budget, government envisaged to raise 55 billion Ghana cedis in taxes and an additional 17 billion Ghana cedis in non-tax revenue, so making 72 billion Ghana cedis. However, if you go and look at their expenditure, we are going to spend 35.8 billion Ghana cedis to service interest alone, to pay interest on the loans, the amount of money we owed as a country, our public debt. And then 15.2 billion Ghana cedis to do amortization, that is pay down the actual loan. If you added it, it amounted to 51 billion Ghana cedis, which is 92.7% of all the tax revenue that we collected. Just two items took 92.7% of the tax we collected. Now, the remaining amount of about 20 billion Ghana cedis or 21 billion Ghana cedis was not enough to pay public workers, because the public wage bill at the time, last or this year, is 30 billion Ghana cedis. So, government needed to borrow an additional 9 billion to be able to pay public sector workers. So, if you added the two, all our tax revenue was gone, and we had to go and borrow. Meanwhile, goods and services had not come. Arrears owed to contractors had not come. What we call capital expenditure, that is spending on infrastructure, had not come. And all the other commitments that government has in the budget statement had not come. Now, this created a severe cash crunch. So you found that contractors were complaining. Contractors alone were owed about 10 billion Ghana cedis. The colleges of education, out of the whole academic year of 12 months, students had been to school only 3 months because government didn't have money to pay or give to the schools to be run. For 2 academic years, government has not been able to find money to print textbooks for basic school pupils. So for 2 academic years, 2 years straight, there are no textbooks in our, basic schools. Government's own much touted nursing and teacher training allowances had been in arrears for 6 months. Lecturers were making demands which government could not meet. Even though they had declared a year of roads, we actually witnessed a year of no roads. A government basically did not have money to do anything else. The effect of this was that those who were lending money to us, because our budget is heavily dependent on borrowing, we get money through 3 sources: tax and non-tax revenue, and then borrowing. Non-tax revenue includes grants, free money. So these three sources are what we get our money from, including all the minerals that we go and sell and come. Now, those who were lending money to us in the international market saw our books and saw the state of our finances and began to panic and saw that our debts had become unsustainable, and that if they continue to lend us money, we were not going to be in a position to pay back. So around the middle of this year, they began to hold back. In fact, in October, this government went onto the international bond market to borrow what they call green bonds, totaling $1 billion. Investors did not touch the bonds with a long pole. The way they did that was to raise the interest beyond our ability to pay. So we didn't get the money, and this government came back empty-handed. And then others, too, fearing that the economic situation was going to get worse and that we were not going to be able to pay, began to withdraw their money. That is how come the cedi started falling. So we moved from around 6 cedis. As of yesterday, it was 6.5 cedis. So these two put enormous pressure on government, because what it meant was that the economy had been run aground. Investors did not have confidence in our economy. They were not prepared to lend us money, and if they don't lend us money, this economy will collapse. And before it does, they will come and withdraw the monies that they've borrowed us. And the arrangements are such that when they call for it, you must immediately give it to us. So all the money we have at the central bank, the foreign exchange that we have at the central bank, will have to be used to pay them. And that will lead to a catastrophic crash of the Ghanaian economy. So it was out of this panic situation that the government then began to prepare the budgets. So, and if you read all the international rating agencies, the financial institutions, investors were concerned about the fiscal situation and the ability to raise revenue to pay off the debts that we owe them. So what was government's response? Go and prepare a budget that sent a signal to the international markets that we were suddenly in a position to pay our debt. And how are we going to be able to do that? They put in revenue measures that they thought would convince the international financial market. And it was out of that that the e-levy was born, to raise 7 billion Ghana cedis. And then the benchmark value discounts that Dr. Bawumia had touted all over the place in typical propaganda, misguided fashion. They said they were going to reverse it. Because contrary to Bawumia's claims that the reversal of that policy led to revenue increase of 25%. Indeed, in a letter that the GRA Director General wrote to the Finance Minister, he indicated that as of the last quarter of 2020, they lost a total of 468 million Ghana cedis because of that policy. And that if they reversed it, they will make gains of over 600 million Ghana cedis. And then they also said that they needed to raise fees and charges by 15%. So now many people have not averted their minds to that because the e-levy is dominant. That meant that over 20,000 different fees that we pay for government and state services were going to be increased by 15%. And they even proposed in the budget that it was going to be automatically adjusted every year in line with inflation. Currently, inflation is around 11%. So every year it was going to go up by the rate of inflation. So school fees, the fees you pay at the hospital, even mortuary fees, were going to go up by 50%. And there's a huge book that contains all the fees. It is over 20,000 different fees that all of us pay, because one way or the other we interface with government agencies. Registrar General, if you go to FDA to register a product, if you go to the Standards Authority, DVLA to renew your license or your roadworthy, all those fees were going to go up. And all of this was done with a view to convincing the international markets that we suddenly were in a position to pay our debts. So if you look at the budget, from revenue projections of 72 billion Ghana cedis this year, they have jumped to 105 billion Ghana cedis. Tax revenue alone is supposed to be 80 billion Ghana cedis. In other words, they were going to squeeze out an additional 25 billion Ghana cedis on top of what they projected to collect this year. And to do that, they were essentially going to squeeze the lifeblood, the breath out of Ghanaians. They were attempting to squeeze water out of stone with these policies. Now, every seasoned financial analyst, and I'm sure my colleagues here would agree, that those projections themselves were not realistic. Even the 55 billion Ghana cedis that they project to get this year, they are struggling. If we read the budget, as of September, there was a deficit of 4%. Sorry, 4 billion Ghana cedis shortfall in their projections. So you can't even collect 55 billion Ghana cedis. Suddenly, in the space of 12 months, you hope to collect 25 billion Ghana cedis more to make 80 billion Ghana cedis. So the projections were not realistic. And you know what? Just a day, no, in fact, it wasn't even a day, within hours of the reading of the budget, our bonds on the international markets became even more expensive. The investors jacked up their yields or their interest rates again within hours of the reading of the budget, because they saw through the charade that government was putting up that it was not in a position to raise this kind of revenue within 12 months. And indeed, what many people do not know is that out of panic, the Ministry of Finance issued a statement meant for only the international community. Even though it was addressed to editors of news organizations in Ghana, nobody in Ghana saw that statement. I have it here on my phone. And they sought to explain the figures in the budget, because the investors saw that our deficit was moving from 15.6% to 12.1%, which is extremely high for them. And so they issued that statement to quell the concerns on international markets. And only last week, the yields on our bonds went up to 12%, which makes borrowing on the international market unsustainable for us, because it is too expensive and we can't pay. So the international community, for whom these revenue projections were designed, does not have confidence in the budget. They don't have confidence in the projections that this government has made. The effect, however, is that this government had plunged Ghanaians into excruciating hardships. So they were going to charge 1.75% in Momo tax, in addition to all the taxes. There are over 22 taxes that this government has introduced in the last 5 years. On top of that was going to be this Momo tax of 1.75%, the 15% increase in fees and charges, the reversal of benchmark revenue, which meant that when it takes off next year, the price of goods and items that are imported was going to increase by between 25 to 30%. Indeed, this week I heard Guta urge their members to increase their products, the price of their products, by 100%. In the meantime, too, fuel prices have been going up because of the rapid depreciation in the dollar and additional taxes that this government had put on petroleum. So the situation has become unbearable. I don't recall any time under the Fourth Republic that Ghanaians had to endure this much economic hardship. The economic situation is perilous. It is terrible. It is devastating households and families. Incomes have so dwindled. Look at the situation where public sector workers got only 4% in wage increases, and yet inflation is 11%. So already they are starting with a deficit of 7%. That increase in wages has no value compared to the rate at which prices of goods and services are increasing. So Sena, this is where we are, and this is how we have gotten here. This government decided that it was more important to win elections in 2020 than to manage the economy properly. And you see, they made a lot of excuses with COVID. And rightly so, Ghanaians have dismissed it rather offhandedly. You know what? COVID is a pandemic. It's not an epidemic. It's not like cholera or tuberculosis. So it affected just about every country in this world. It affected all the countries around us. Indeed, if you look at the numbers in those countries, it means that they have managed it much better than us. Cote d'Ivoire has 25 million people, just 5 million short of our population. Yet their COVID deaths are under 500 people. We have over 1,000 deaths. So if you look at that figure alone, it suggests that they have managed it better than we did. Their numbers are lower. And yet, check Cote d'Ivoire's economic figures. Their debts to GDP ratio is under 50%. Their deficit is under 6%. Our deficit after COVID was 15.6%. We are an outlier. And if you check all those countries, the difference between us and them is that we had an election in 2020, which this government purposed to win at all costs through fair or foul means. So it was the decision to spend recklessly during the elections that led us into this hole. And the way that they perceive to get out of that hole is to kill us with hardships and taxes. So that is where we are, and that is how we have got here. So it is squarely the responsibility of President Akufo-Addo, and it's rather usually talkative vice president who has gone silent since the introduction of the e-levy that we are here. You know, in times past, once the budget had been read, you will see him all over the place, grinning from year to year and heaping plaudits and accolades on himself. But since the e-levy was introduced, he has gone into a self-imposed culture of silence. He has not, a lot of whimper has been heard from him on this budget. Somebody who is so quick to tout supposed economic credentials has been afflicted by tongue-tiedness, you know. His tongue has been tied, sealed to the upper part of his mouth. He can't speak. The e-levy has imposed a culture of silence on him, because it goes against every claim that he made in opposition, that from taxation to production, meaningless slogans that means nothing. They mean nothing to the ordinary man. In this place, we've had taxation and more taxation and even more taxation. We've moved from tax to tax to tax after tax, instead of moving from taxation to production. Now, since the budget was read, a massive contestation has arisen. First of all, the people of Ghana have resoundingly rejected this budget. For the first time, the budget is not the subject of political contestation. It is not. It is the people of Ghana against Bawumia and Akufo-Addo. It is not a contestation between the NDC and the NPP. It is the people of Ghana against Bawumia and Akufo-Addo. I don't recall any time I have heard about the rejection of the Liman budget in 1981, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know what the political environment was like. I don't know whether it was greeted with similar sentiments. But this one is particularly intense, so that even NPP fanatics are opposed to this budget. And the number one item around which anger has built is the e-levy, because people see that this is a reckless government that continues to spend our resources recklessly, that simply wants to strangle us in order to take more money from us, to plug the hole they've created, and use a chunk of it to finance their lavish lifestyles. So the NPP is approaching this matter as if it is a regular debate between the NPP and the NDC. No. It is a massive revolt by the people of Ghana against this reckless and hopelessly incompetent government, because they see that all the monies that have been collected from them have gone down the drain, and there's no real tangible benefit or outcome that can be measured against what they've given this government. They've had more money than any other government, all other governments combined under the Fourth Republic. So they take the budget to Parliament, fail to do the appropriate mobilization of their numbers in Parliament. The budget just gets rejected. Then they engage in political acrobatics and purport to have set aside the rejection and approve the budget. So as we speak, the budget is in limbo. But even as all of this has gone on, what has been the posture and attitude of the president?
And I'll be glad if you learn on that.
No problem.
Yep.
You know, he's behaving like the infamous Nero of ancient Rome, who was fiddling whilst Rome was burning. In the week that the budget was read, the president found it more desirable and appropriate to hire an aircraft costing us $14,000 an hour at a time when we have a fully fitted, fairly luxurious presidential aircraft. And he sat in that private jet costing us $14,000 to the French Alps on vacation in the week that the budget was being read, and people were crying about economic hardships. when he came back, he would have thought that given all the controversy that had arisen, he will personally take charge of the narrative and seek to build bridges with a view to addressing the concerns the people have about the budget. No, what did he do? He sat in the same $14,000 an hour aircraft again and jetted off to Atlanta to attend a mayor's conference. He thought that attending a mayor's conference was far more beneficial to him than ensuring that his own budget is passed. And you see, this budget, it was presented by Ken Ofori-Atta. But if you check this bottom corner, it says presented to Parliament on Wednesday, 17 November 2021 by Ken Ofori-Atta, Minister for Finance, on the authority of His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana. So his own budget had been tossed into the dustbin. He couldn't care. It was more fitting for him to go and address a completely inconsequential mayor's conference in the US, Atlanta, in an $8,000 a night presidential suite at the Four Seasons Hotel, when Ghanaians could not afford one meal a day, when Ghanaians were crying about the havoc and devastation that these taxes in the budget will cause. But Sena, before I land, it is important to let Ghanaians know that the attempt by government to justify everything under the sun with this e-levy is completely false. If we read the budget, the minister is clear on why they say they are introducing the e-levy. He says that it will go into entrepreneurship, something they call U-Start. It will fix roads and then improve transportation and then fight and ensure cyber security, right? These are the 5 reasons that the minister gave. But suddenly, everything under the sun will be resolved by e-levy. You mentioned the agric minister, who in recent times has come in for public ridicule because of his almost comical interventions on important national matters. There is a man who says that he relies on his wife for data on the cost of goods, prices, on the prices of food items on the market, and robustly denies that food prices are going up. At a time when you and I know, everybody, even a child, knows that food prices are going up. He says that without e-levy, farmers won't get fertilizer. Meanwhile, if you check all the budgets that have been read, planting for foods and jobs, yet another slogan has been capped. Indeed, in my estimation, about 3 billion Ghana cedis has been allocated in the previous 5 budgets to that program. Yet, as of the middle of this year, they had accrued as much as 780 million Ghana cedis in arrears to fertilizer supplies. So what happened to all the money that had been given him in previous budgets? So this e-levy will not resolve that matter. In fact, if you look at the budget statements, 3 items: debt service, which amounts to 45.3 billion Ghana cedis; public sector wages, 37 billion Ghana cedis; and statutory payments, 31 billion Ghana cedis, will amount to 113 billion Ghana cedis. It is far more than the revenue that this government says it will get of 105 billion Ghana cedis. So the claim that these taxes are going to go into entrepreneurship and use tax, just another slogan, is completely misleading. Look, if you read the budget, if you go to Appendix 4D, page 250 of this budget, the minister in the text claimed that over the next 4 years, they will pump 10 billion Ghana cedis into entrepreneurship and youth employment through U-Start, and that this year they are allocating 1 billion Ghana cedis. That's what the minister said. Yes, if you look at the appendix, they've only allocated a paltry 385 million Ghana cedis, when he has promised in the same document that it will be 1 billion. When we inquired, he said that the private sector will provide the remaining 600 billion. Sena, where is the private sector going to get 600 billion Ghana cedis from? To give to 600 million Ghana cedis, I beg your pardon, to give to government to do this. Where is the guarantee? So even the justification that they provide for the e-levy is at best tenuous and speculative. It is speculative. There's no concrete evidence that it will happen. And if you read the 2021 budget, they came to recite similar slogans. Ghana cares about Tampa. They said they will set up a youth bank. They will do this, they will do that for the youth. They will create 1 million jobs. So now in the end, we all saw how recruitment of just 3,000 people attracted over 120,000 young applicants. But for the immigration service, the same for the armed forces, the same for the police, the same for the fire service. We saw how government's own job fair at the Accra International Conference Center resulted in a stampede. The terrible unemployment situation was not addressed by the 2021 budget, despite all the promises and the taxes that were imposed in there. And yet suddenly the minister wants to give further hope that the young people of Ghana, 1 million of them or so, are going to be employed through a program that he has devoted only 385 million Ghana cedis to. And this is only an allocation. There's no guarantee that it will even be dispersed. Okay. Then, even before this e-levy has been properly constituted and set up, even before the budget is approved and accepted, they have earmarked 241 million Ghana cedis for a so-called e-transaction levy services. Essentially, their cronies are lining up to line their pockets with this money, because the so-called e-transaction levy services can be provided by existing agencies. The current GVG, as controversial as it is, has capacity to do it. The telcos themselves are the ones who have put in place the system to have mobile money done across their networks. They have the capacity to monitor and ensure that government gets the, what do you call it, why? VAT, the Ghana Revenue Authority. They collect $2 billion in VAT every year without fuss. Only yesterday, I was with some friends in a restaurant. Our total bill was around 865 Ghana cedis. The tax component alone was 120 Ghana cedis. Tax alone, 120 Ghana cedis out of 865 Ghana cedis that we spent for just 3 people eating in a restaurant. Look at the amount of taxes we pay, and government finds it necessary to put these taxes into such grand schemes. 241 million Ghana cedis to shady individuals and organizations. Sena, look at Agenda 111 that they made so much noise about. They said they will build 111 hospitals, 88 of them being district hospitals. Each one of them will cost $17 million. So we are talking in essence of 1.7 billion Ghana cedis. Yes, and I check how much they devoted to it in this budget. 518 million Ghana cedis, which is less than $100 million, which is less than 7% of the amount of money required. Meanwhile, they've told us that by the end of this year, they will deliver those hospitals. Okay. Yet all the money they've devoted is less than 7% of what they need to do it. They cannot build even 5 of these hospitals. So really, before I land, it is important that Ghanaians appreciate the context within which this discussion is being had. And you see, the NDC MPs have done a yeoman's job. They've kept this government at bay and prevented the situation where this obnoxious killer tax is railroaded and rammed down the throats of you and I. But you see, they are only 137. So if we leave the fight to them alone, we will not achieve the effect that we require. All 30 million of us would have to join the battle to compel government to step back from this terrible economic measure that is has introduced. And that's where the strike action embarked on by the drivers comes in. I beg your pardon. Look at the impact that had. Look at the visceral suffering that people went through. And look at how it compelled government immediately to purport to have ordered GOIL to reduce their fuel price by 15 pesos. Indeed, strangely enough, only 2 days or so ago, GOIL also issued a statement denying that he had been instructed by government to do so, and that it is a routine measure that they do because their outlook is not just about profit, because they are a state organization. So even in the supposed remedy to the suffering that Ghanaians are going through, this government is not honest. They are peddling falsehood. So you can't trust anything that they do. Okay. So it is citizens' participation in the process towards opposing these draconian tax measures that will get government to sit up. So whereas the NDC MPs have remained loyal, have shown fidelity to the people who send them to parliament and the generality of Ghanaians, it is not enough to leave the fight to them. We must all join the fight in order that the most potent message is sent to government that Ghanaians will not stand for this recklessness and mismanagement of the Ghanaian economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, at some point in the show, Comrade Benambona will be speaking. They part of a group called Justice for Ghana. have also been demonstrating on this issue. So we'll hear from him. But let me go, before I go to Doc, I'll go to Doc shortly. When I was introducing Hills FM, I said it was in the Wuti region. Charles is telling me, Charles, who works with Hills FM, says it's in the Volta region, rather, Adaklu, to be specific. So, Adaklu, Hills FM in Adaklu. Doc, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Sena.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you, and good to be here. Yes, I've been busy in all things research, and in the past, I think last week I was in the north. I spent 3 days going through all the major towns in the north, in all the regions. And where? Sankana. Where is it on the? Which road is that on? Okay, so Upper West, I went to Sola. Okay, and from from Sola, all the way to Wa, and then to Hamle, through Nadoli and others. So maybe it might not have been on that road.
Because Sankana is on this side, you decided to ignore it. So you still owe a visit to Sankana.
Okay, so maybe it's not also on the Tamale Bolga
No, it's
road.
not far from Nadoli actually.
Oh, okay. So
when
then,
you get
but I should have veered off the main road.
Yeah, just 5 minutes.
Okay. So I was nearly there. Yeah. Okay. All right. So and I think Felix has given us a framework, and even though the framework was, we could have stuck to it, and maybe if we had left out some of the political, I would say ramblings, we could have maybe be more focused and then have a framework for our discussion. Okay, but then I wouldn't take it from him. He's a political person, so this is an opportunity for him. But his framework is beautiful, and we can stick to that. Okay, so he said that as a people, where are we? Why have we arrived here? And where are we going? Okay, so I will use that framework, and then I will highlight most of the issues. As a Ghanaian, a person with interest in Ghana, the development of Ghana, and as a contributor to the development of our nation, that is all that I'm interested in. Whether this party has done this or not, I wouldn't go in there. But then I would say that in the Fourth Republic, only the two parties have managed this country for about 30 years. So wherever we are is the contribution of the two parties. Okay, and wherever we are, where we are going is determined by the constitution that we implemented in 1992, 1993. That gives us the framework. So if we have mismanagement, it emanates from the constitution. So where we are now, we are looking at a country as a club or association of people. Okay, so citizens of this country belong to that club, and in a club or association, everybody has to contribute for the common good of that association. So as a people of over 30 million, we need to be ensured that we all play our part and arrive at the revenue that we can use to finance or ensure that we are able to carry out the necessary expenditure to develop our country. Okay, so Ghana, for example, if you look at the amount of money we collect a year, we collect only 13% of our GDP. So if we are producing, we are saying that everybody is producing and everybody is being charged the average tax we will say that everybody is paying 13%. And that 13% of our production, we need to analyze whether it's sufficient to sustain the country. So that is where we are, that is the situation. So that 13%, if it was sufficient, we would have run the country without deficit. And as deficit translates into debt, there wouldn't be debt. But as at now, the 13 is clearly insufficient. And if we compare to other countries, okay, for example, Rwanda 17%, we have Burkina Faso 16.8, Kenya 17.4, South Africa 29.1. And even an average of 30 African countries, we are looking at 16.5. Okay, we managed to rise to 13% in 2017, and we've been stagnant at the 13%. It was projected that we will hit 20% in 2023. We are in 2021, and we are still at 13 or say 14%. So we have a long way to go. But then I would say, look at our lifestyles. And as I said, I've been, apart from the north, before I traveled to the north, I traveled to the Ahafo and Bono. Okay. Ahafo, I would say that, I don't know, it wasn't my fault, but my dad took me to a village in Ahafo for 1 year, where I was working for 6 years to go to school. So I decided to go and look at that place just about a month ago and see what had happened since 1973. And when I went there, I nearly cried. Nothing has changed. Things have rather gone down. So since 1973, 1974, some people in this country are in this stagnation. They haven't seen any development. And people are still walking that distance. That road is untarred. And then the road from Techiman to the nearest place is called Dema. We travel from a place called Abofor, just after Abofor. And that road was as it was in 1974. So as a people, even though we may stay in Accra and just analyze the situation from the perspective of Accra, when we take the country as a whole, we are not doing much. Okay, so for the 13%, it's like you've inherited a legacy from your dad, and you yourself, you are not doing much to sustain that. So over time, you become indebted, your resources will be depleted. So if I were the finance minister, I would look for the innovation, and after getting a tax innovation, I will consult with my people. Where we are is nothing to be written home about. We need to rise to at least the average of African countries of 16%. And then when you go to this parts of the our country where people travel on more travel roads, the roads could even be graded. They are not graded. We are waiting for asphalt or the budget to construct the roads. But when I spent 6 years in Congo, they had graders and dumpers at the strategic places. So after the rains, they have to ensure that all roads are graded. Then people can move goods and then persons. When we travel to most parts of our country, it's not like that. In 1973-74, as I was talking about, my dad used to be the regional engineer for highways for Upper Region. And he was supervising the Nabrongo Tumu Road. As I said, I drove from Bolga to Paga, and I had to go to Hamile. I was advised not to use the Nabrongo Tumu Road. Since 1970, that road has never been motorable. Okay? We are sitting here, we are enjoying everything in Accra and maybe to a lesser extent Kumasi and others. And we think that we are okay at 13%. So we need to find the means to bridge that gap from 13 to at least 16. I wouldn't say that e-levy is not a good tax or not, but we need to find a vehicle which will raise that necessary revenue for us to develop our country. We have a lot of people who have not benefited from education, who cannot even afford health care. And then, as I said, the infrastructure. So we have critical issues to consider as a nation. So if we are looking at the budget and we just jump to the dismissal of the budget, we are not doing ourselves any good. We have to look at the issues in the budget and then discuss them one by one. Fine, the e-levy is an issue that has come up. We need to discuss the fairness of the tax, whether some people are overpaying. And as we know, if you take the tax revenue of the nation, you've got income tax, you've got corporate tax, and then VAT that account for 70%. And then we know that even the income tax and corporate tax, we've got a big sector called informal sector. Informal sector. And they are not touched by taxation apart from the informal, indirect taxes like VAT. So the finance minister might have thought that maybe the e-levy could allow him to access the informal sector. But then we have a case where most people in the formal sector may also use the electronic transfers. And so they are already heavily taxed and they will suffer additional tax. So the e-levy, if that is the tax that the government has chosen, then it requires consultation and consensus exactly on how to ensure that those who are already overpaying do not pay more tax. And if it is to help us access the informal sector, then so should it be that we ensure that we only find taxes or even direct it to how we can only tax those who are not currently paying taxes in the formal sector. That is not an easy tax. So that is why perhaps they might have jumped to the blanket. But then it still requires discussion so that we can fine-tune it. But then that cannot be the only. As I said, if we look at the lifestyles of Ghanaians in the capitals or the regional capitals, it doesn't reflect people who only contribute 13%. You attend a funeral, today is a Saturday, go to Accra and Kumasi and look at the expenditure of the people. Some of them will refuse to pay taxes just because, as I said, it could be because of the framework which was offered by our constitution, we are not able to come out and manage the economy in such a way that we will reduce the informal sector and also curb that lavish lifestyles of Ghanaians. Everybody is now aspiring to overspend at funerals, weddings, churches, and others. Other countries did not develop that way. Other countries did not develop that way. When you go to the UK, they have something that they called sumptuary tax. And that sumptuary tax is what we call cutting your coat according to your cloth. It's not everybody in the country that can have a befitting burial of more than 100,000 Ghana cedis. So if you are taxing production and leaving that conspicuous consumption untaxed, then you are not helping your country. Okay, so we need to sit down and brainstorm both parties, instead of fighting in parliament and say rejecting or approving. We need to sit down and build a consensus on how to move our country forward. Because whether you like it or not, budget has to be implemented in order for us to move forward. And whether it's at 13%, 16% or 17%, we need to ensure that we get to somewhere where we can reduce our debt level. And also ensure that all the social interventions that we are now, for example, the free SHS that we've introduced, that is carried out effectively. As Felix said, most of the expenditures that, or the services that we agree to offer, we are not able to fund. But then, as they say, they always say, so if you are not, you are only generating 13%, where are you going to get the money? Are you also going to borrow? If you look at the budget that we have now, we are looking at a revenue of just over 100 billion. But then the expenditure is over 137 billion. So how do you sustain this? How do you sustain this economy? So we are in a serious situation. And he rightly said, as an individual, you wouldn't have this. Where you are paid 100 cedis, but you spend 137 cedis every year. Where are you going? You end up with such a huge debt that you cannot support yourself. And as I said, a country is a honeycomb. You know, the honeycomb with so many holes. We've got the individuals failing. Whatever we contribute as individuals, whatever will end up as a collective. So we need to look at ourselves. How much are we contributing to the national basket of revenue? Okay, so maybe the e-levy was not the best one, but we need a vehicle to bridge the gap so that we can develop our nation. So I'm not here to say e-levy should be rejected or whatever, but I think we need something. And the earlier we put our minds to whatever we should do, whether the elephant of the informal sector or our conspicuous consumptions and the loopholes in our constitution, which are being exploited by our political appointees and our politicians. Those are the areas that we should spend our energy on. How to ensure that whatever is collected is put to good use. See, we had the Constitution of 1979, when it came to the Constitution of 1992, if you look at those constitutions, you will see a lot of checks and balances removed from the 1979 to 1992. Both parties have come to power successively. Nothing has been done about it. For 30 years, one just looks at the other while the other is enjoying and jealously waits for the his turn. Then the other person will criticize. And we cannot do that. Life is not, the development of a nation is not a turntable where the turntable goes round and then your turn, you enjoy, somebody also goes in hibernation for 8 years and comes back. We should ensure we have that country that we belong to developed. And that is not fighting. We should have our politics or whatever political parties are the tools to help us mobilize the interest. But they are our own making. They are not what we want as a people. We want the country developed. And I told you about the research that I'm doing nationwide. If you see the confidence in political parties and even the state institutions, you wouldn't. And I've got more than 1,200 participants. See, so the political parties, you are not helping us. It's the same. Political parties as well as religion, they are human created. See, they are not to consume us. They are to help us solve problems. And our problem of development is not being solved. So what do? We need to think as a people and come out with practical solutions to move from where we are to where we want to go, as Felix said. And that one, it requires comprehensive thinking. And as a people, we should do that. And then we should also look at our constitution. As we have now, it's time for both parties, or the people. We as a people, we need to look at why some of the checks and balances provisions were watered down in 1992. And why that has led to our current state of corruption that we all complain about. If we have that rising corruption, what do we do about it? If you are always complaining about taxation, why do you not plug the loopholes? And then before you say that, oh, I will only pay when the money is used judiciously. I think we, as a people, we own this country. The public officials or the appointees are just our agents. If we allow them to do whatever they want and we accept, we cannot blame them. We need to look at what is going on, the phenomenon, and ensure that is directed to our needs. We shouldn't be allowed to be subjects of vested interests. We need to analyze our situation, and then we go wherever we want to go. So, as I said, through my travels, sometimes I stop and cry. Why are we doing this to ourselves? There's a road from Yape to Sola. I'm sure, Bernard, you know that road. Passing through Damongo. Yeah. They were given to, that road was given to 2 contractors. So from Yape to near Damongo, there's no trouble. The road was completed in 2016 by the 2 contractors. From Damongo to Sola, just 5 years. You go and borrow such a money. That's money to construct a road of how many kilometers? Could it be 100 or just over 100? Yes. Good. Half of it is more trouble. But I was told they were constructed by 2 Chinese contractors. Is that true? Felix, maybe you may know. Yes. Yes. One section has lasted more than 5 years. Another section is not more trouble. 5 years. And if you look at the amount of money that is put in construction of roads, and it lasts for 5 years, and besides, you're only collecting 13%. The money is not even enough to maintain it. And when you're constructing, you don't ensure that it lasts for 20 years. So you end up just spending the money in Accra and not covering all these areas. Okay. So the issues are there. Let's not run away from the issues. Let's deal with the developmental issues we have holistically. And then we can come to our budget. How do we raise enough? And when we raise that money, how do we use it judiciously to ensure that all the things that we say we're going to do are done correctly? So that is my take on that.
Doc, thank you. Thank you. Let me do a few messages on Facebook that I can see right now. This one from Koshi Badon says the trite need to raise revenue should not arise in the debate. Your tax defies all the tenets of taxation. In fact, it's a rip-off. 1. This tax policy taxes you for the use of payment mode and not for income earned. You pay tax to support a system that made it possible for you to earn an income. 2. This is indiscriminate, so prone to double taxation. Multiple transfers of same money will be taxed multiple times. Transfer of an already taxed money will be taxed again. In fact, if your salary is paid via an electronic medium, it will be taxed again. The policy taxes capital, which is against all taxation laws. If you transfer your working capital for supplies, it will be taxed because the system cannot differentiate between capital and interest or profit. You pay tax on profit or interest. 4. The argument that current Nombo transactions attract fee is ignorance in spite. The telecommunications companies provide a platform for clients to transfer money, for which fee is charged. These charges form part of the revenue on which government taxes the telecommunications companies. For which service is government taking 1.75% of transfers. 5. The operation of this tax will be so absurd that it would make nonsense of many transfers, especially for the high value consumers. For instance, if you transfer 100,000 Ghana cedis to a supply in Accra from Kumasi, you will pay 1,750 unique tax. Now this is more than a return ticket from Kumasi to Accra by air. If your turnover is weekly, you pay 84,000 in a year in e-tax. This represents 84% of your capital, your initial capital. Who can bear this? This Nombo tax proposal is so patently foolish that I can't fathom whose idea it is. Koshi Badon said that from Denu. And Ateta says, I don't understand this government. Why tax the ordinary Ghanaian who is not working by relying on family members who have already paid their income tax and have decided to help family and friends who are jobless? Nanado and MPP are just insensitive to the plight of Ghanaians. Those are some of the messages I can immediately refer to. Let me jump to Mr. Yabuana.
Morning to you. I think Felix and Doc has set the parameters. I would like to look at things from a more technical, but as much as possible. I would want to be very serious about most of my analysis so that common minds would also understand where we are coming from. Look, it is just recklessness and nothing more. And I don't also think or do not believe in that thing that, well, politicians. It is not about politicians. Because because I think that as a country we should have a mind that works. And I don't believe that the current economic handlers are ignorant economists. But to say, I believe that they are all suffering basically from what we will call the illusionary superiority, where people feel they know so much and therefore they are not prepared to listen to any other person. Our issues did not begin from 2020. It began way before 2020. Now go and look at the 2017 budget government brought or sent to Parliament. They clearly state in there that the elsewhere government borrowed more because they had an open in terms of the debt to GDP ratio. And that is why government went on to borrow. And that came up to about 128 billion, if I am right. So they are aware of it, that somebody took advantage of the ratios in terms of debt to GDP. Therefore, whoever is leading the economic team of this government is not ignorant. Come to 2018, when there was a rebasing and there was another opportunity where the debt to GDP, it's looking better. What happened? That was when the borrowing started. 2019, they had actually indicated in their budget, if my memory should set me right, paragraph 23 in the 2019 budget, they had indicated that the rebasing coupled with other items that were brought into the computation of our GDP had enlarged our GDP base by 24.5%. So again, Dr. Baumia was not ignorant. Mr. Ken Oforiatta was neither ignorant of these facts, but they also saw it as an opportunity to be reckless, to go out there and borrow. Now, the 2020 budget. In 2019, we had done about 53 billion in terms of tax revenues. And we had budgeted to do about 72 billion in terms of 2020 revenues. But what happened? If you look at line by line, the variance, the negative variance, is not that much. And it was compensated by reduction in terms of expenditure. But the non-tax revenue aspect is where the issue is. Where from 7 billion in 2019, you had projected over 13 billion revenues. COVID hit, and then you revise it down to 6 billion. So the 72 billion, in actual fact, which wasn't achieved, weren't in tax revenue. So in terms of tax revenue, the variances were not that much bad. Now, is
it a situation that you put up
to give readers of the budget some comfort that things are good, so that you can go on your reckless spending? That is what this issue is about. We should also understand something about budget. It is just a plan, and you can be prudent with your plan, and you can choose to be reckless with your plan. Now, if you choose to be reckless with your plan, I will not attribute that to all politicians. I will hold you to your own plans. Now, the issue we should be asking ourselves is the analogy Dr. Baumia himself made in 2016, September, at the National Theatre, talking about the maize farmer whose total bags are his production, and therefore the GDP. And therefore, if the fails to get more bags, he cannot blame it on fertilizer. Are we being told today that we should blame it on fertilizer or rainfall? Assume to measure someone with a different measure, and then when it is your turn, you tell us that a certain percentage of persons in this country are not paying taxes. What is the structure of our economy? Agric is not taxed, and a large population of Ghanaians are in the agric sector. So your GDP produce, you must realize that a huge aspect of it would go untaxed. Look, we can talk of solutions, but as usual, I think that this is a government that is suffering from illusionary superiority, and therefore they don't listen. No matter how much suggestion you put out that will help this economy, they will still not listen. Nonetheless, we will put it out for them, knowing very well that they will not listen. Now, the issue is, what are they seeking? 1 billion cedis from e-levy or what? Because, Sena, the data from Bank of Ghana as of September is approximately, when you are talking about the value in terms of Nombo, is 2 billion. With 377 million transactions. That comes to about 216 cedis a transaction. Exempting 100 cedis. What it means is that they seek to tax 116 cedis at 1.75%. Meaning they will raise 2 cedis per each transaction. Multiply by the 377 million, you are talking about approximately 776 million. That is what they seek to raise, because that is what they will raise, and they will raise far less because of how perception in economics plays out. People are going to move one of the major components, and I think Felix mentioned it, in our budget is our debts, in terms of servicing our debt. And sometimes I don't want to compare debt to GDP because it's so misleading.
if you know how we bring all these figures together to have the GDP, and especially in an economy such as ours. The monies they borrowed into the construction sectors, the monies they borrowed into our healthcare systems and sectors are all part of the GDP. And that is what we call securitization. You have borrowed to put into something. That thing must be productive enough to pay for itself. If it is not productive enough to pay for itself, then other productive sectors of your economy must then pay for it. And the question is, those productive sectors, are they capable of paying for that? No, clearly. Because of our expenditure levels, which I will say it's our appetite. The appetite for spending with this government has gone beyond the necessary. We blame it on COVID to do an overall deficit of 44 billion from a historical of 16 billion. We can't say the situation is the same. 2021, it is much improved. Why are we not looking at our expenditure levels? Granted, you are in government. Proud to coming into government, you talk of production and not taxes. What you sought to do was to increase production, the volumes, and that will compensate us in terms of taxes. Meanwhile, one line, which is the indirect tax, VAT, a consumer tax, is where we should be looking at. It is only lazy to say, I am coming out with e-levy, when in fact, if they aren't ignorant economists, they will be looking towards an e-invoice instead of e-levy. And that is where I say we will give them the solution, knowing that they will not even listen to it. All over Europe, VAT is has the biggest contribution to tax revenue. Italy, wherever. Because the moment you import, your input VAT has already been attributed to you on the system. The moment you sell at your office, the tax authorities have what you have sold. I thought these were the people touting themselves as digitalizing Ghana and doing all those stuff. So what prevents you from saying that if I am supposed to send any money with regards to Nombo, I am given an option to select whether this money is remittance, whether this money is sales, or whether this money is payment of tax. Is it too much that we cannot do by a digitalized government or digitalization government, so that the records can be held and be used to raise more taxes? And therefore I can say that, Sena, you did so much of business, you did so much of remittance, and you pay so much of taxes. The direction to go is what the Chileans and everybody have done, from Denmark to everywhere. The e-invoicing is what is supposed to be the agenda today, and not 776 million. And I have challenged them I am saying let them have their way and let us finish the year 2022. We will come to this table again looking for more taxes. What we have not realized is how productive the things we invest in are. Because, look, this talk of taxes. The 2016 manifesto of the MPP even proposed to reduce corporate tax to 20%. Are we talking of that now? We are still at 25%. And I can tell you, we can in fact reduce taxes and have more taxes. Because what you do is what himself, Dr. Baumia, said in the introduction or prior to the introduction of the benchmark values. When he claimed that it is only promoting the avoidance of the taxes and all that, and therefore we need to implement this. Now, today I ask, what has changed? Let's ask ourselves, what has changed? Why are you bringing it back? And how much do you seek to raise? Because trust me, if most of the importers speak to them, they go out there, they get cheaper goods, they bring them in, and then the system will say, I am going to assess you based on the benchmark value. Probably in Europe, that in Europe, something you claim, or you probably might have bought it at $50, is worth $100, and therefore I'm giving you 30% discount on the value for purposes of tax. This is what we claim to be taking away. What we are only doing is to compound the issues. And trust me, economics from Adam's era had not changed. It's the same thing. What you consume today versus your revenue. If your revenue is not enough to consume that same level, you have two options: whether to reduce your consumption, which is the utility, or to shift to a more productive area or a less expensive area. And that is what is going to happen with this e-levy. Look, you are told that VAT and the other levies are 18.25. Effectively, it is 19.25 because the taxes are cascading. They tell you that when you import stuff into this country, it is 12.5 VAT and all that. Effectively, it is beyond 12.5 because it is cascading. You are paying tax on tax. You are paying tax on duty, which is a tax. You are paying tax on the levies, which is also a tax. At the end of the day, the question we must ask ourselves is that, do we really want to shove up the volumes, monitor it well, collect the appropriate taxes, or we just want to do with the existing capacity that we are running with and keep increasing taxation, and people would keep falling out, and the situation becomes worse and worse. I thought we had smart people in government. Look, let us not miss worse, because when it falls on each man's head. I am paying, you are paying. Nobody today is talking about the poor management of the currency. Nobody is talking about it. But the issues with VRA had not changed. Bottom line, they are still making losses. Why? because of the exchange. We had been promised better managers in terms of the currency. BOG operations, nobody is looking in there. Why did we deplete all our in 2020 we deplete our reserve just to achieve a 3.9% depreciation of the currency against the US dollar, and then come out there and say, oh, we have done well. This is your doing well. You took the praise for it. You won an election for it. Why should I today share in that blame? In the name we are all Ghanaians? No. People must now be accountable for the decisions they do take. They have kept taking on reckless decisions that have landed us in here, and nobody is able to point it out to them. That, hey, Mr. Down here, take a break. You have messed up big time. You see, the finance minister cannot keep wearing white and assume that we will see him as white, because he is not. His management of the finance ministry is the worst in decades, and he must be told. Why should we have brought onto ourselves debt instead of equity with regards to this financial sector cleanup? Why have we expanded the ESLA? Why are we still talking about ESLA today? It is somebody else. Recklessness. And we need to point it out. I mean, look. It is a cycle. You borrow too much, you would have too much to pay. And if you have too much to pay, you have to produce too much to settle that. The CD cannot travel even to Togo. One attribute of a good money that it must go across space. The CD cannot travel to Togo, not Burkina Faso, not Ivory Coast. These are people who said they know how to manage the CD. What this means is that you must be very careful on the bond market. We kept going on to the bond market, calling it a success. But I don't blame the finance minister. I blame the one who appointed him. Because this is a finance bias guy who sees raising capital as a success, when in fact we needed a prudent person in there who will do more accounting-based structural analysis of where we are based on market activities and our demand and supply. We just put a round peg in a square hole. They must be told clearly that they are not up to the job. He should have lost his job long time ago if we are in any serious case. You can't keep borrowing and not able to show me how you are going to raise enough money. It is quite very lazy to say, look, the 2021 budget speaks for itself if you want to be very critical. Go to the 2019 budget. Misreporting between BOG and the Finance Ministry. Broad money. Our money in public, sitting with the public. Foreign exchanges sitting with our banks. Time deposits. About 76 million difference between BOG and Finance. Now, Felix was talking about Dr. Liman's time and what happened with the budget. Exactly. You know why the budget was rejected? It was rejected because there were disagreements in the budget. Yet there are many disagreements in almost every budget they have presented, and no budget has been rejected. And that should tell us something. These are people who don't pay attention to the details. Because trust me, from 53.3 billion you budgeted 2020, that's 2019 outtake. You budgeted 67 billion, that's total revenue. Tax revenue was 42.7 billion in 2019. 2020 you budgeted 49.2 billion. That is basically a 2 billion upward adjustment. You revise it back to 42 billion, which is 2019 outtake. Then your outtake for 2020 came to 44 billion. What it means is that you made 2 billion more. So the issue was never with our tax revenues. It is up to them to come and explain the reason why they would have budgeted to raise non-tax revenue, which was then 7.5 billion in 2019 outtake, to 13.13 billion. They should come and tell us, what did they see actually on the market? And this is what we call recklessness. And you look at these numbers, and based on these numbers, you go out there to spend. And when they had revised it downwards to 6.7 billion and achieved 6.6 billion. What it meant basically is someone just did not do his job. It is not COVID. It is pure recklessness. Now, if you will ask me to pay for your recklessness, for being reckless, I think you should be humble enough to say that I made mistakes. But don't come on the backs of arrogance to tell us that you cannot compromise on the 1.75%. I project, and I do project, and I still hold on to my projections. They will not achieve the numbers they are looking for on e-levy, even if they shoot it up to 2%.
Well, thank you. Interesting. From 6.7, you are giving them over 700 million. That's interesting. Positive change in Medina says our major problem today as a nation is as a result of voting for a media-made and overhyped old man who purely understands nothing about governance and leadership. Today, hunger and hardship has become a social intervention policy in Akufo-Addo's government, and it is very common in every home. Never again to Akufo-Addo's type of leadership. That's positive change. Sending a message from Medina. Lagbaja says, Sena, the nation Ghana gave MPP, the Nana Addo government, elephant to share to the citizens. They couldn't. Now they are asking for a small rabbit to share. How possible? the most insensitive and wicked government. Ghana will never forget these hardships, dangerous moment under Nanado and his cronies. Never again in the history of this country. Thank you for that message. This one is coming from, it's quite long. Dennis Akwete says, it is a big no-no to the monstrous e-levy. And even if the minority group, disappointed with the ordinary Ghanaians as its leader had latently indicated already, in that unpardonable slip under the cover of some personal opinion, we will find our way to make its imposition counterproductive. On the teacher's laptop, it is indeed sad that teachers who are supposed to be well informed were paradoxically made to look like idiots by leadership in the eyes of right-thinking Ghanaians, as they appear to be ill-informed on the said laptop transaction and only had to take delivery of it only because the money had already been deducted from their salaries, and only to note that what they received only looked like a laptop. I sent the specification of the said laptop from my wife, a teacher, to an expert for examination, and it was obvious to me that several things are not really on. Even on a task the laptop is supposed to perform, some difficulty was identified as all teachers do not perform the same task. That said, why must teachers purchase a tool that they use to perform their tasks contrary to the Labour Act, as emphasized by the courts in the case of State Hotels Corporation vs. Usufruye in Italia, that it is the duty of the employer to provide the necessary tools for an employee to work with. That's coming from Dennis Akwete. Habib is okay. Habib also says, Habib Bantu says, this Akufo-Addo government is the worst government Ghana ever had. Teachers are suffering, teacher trainees are suffering, farmers are suffering, doctors are suffering, nurses are suffering, boys are suffering, girls are suffering, market women are suffering, traders are suffering, car users are suffering. Yet government wants to impose more additional hardship on innocent poor Ghanaians with this killer e-levy. But the same government is not cutting down on the expenditure of the executive. So it's okay for the president to use taxpayers' money to rent private jets. What is the cost of the private jet? We want to know. Never in the history of Ghana has any budget been rejected by the Ghanaians than this Akufo-Addo Sewabroni budget. We shall never pay any Momo tax, and we stand solidly behind the NDC MPs in Parliament. God bless Ghana. You say, Eyu Farouk in Tamale North, as a very short one, why can't the government scrap the insensitive e-levy? The e-levy shouldn't be the only resort for government to generate revenue. Thank you. Koblavi Mpokwasi Bengazi also says the Minister of Information in the person of Kojo Ponkoma must bow his head in a big shame for being silent on Ayawa's West Wogon guns and cutlasses attack on some NDC members. God in his own right time will expose the perpetrators. You say, okay, so this one is from Jonas, who says, we are the antidote against tyranny. That's a quote. Says it was in an exclusive interview with Al Jazeera after Nobel Peace Prize ceremony. Winners Maria Ressa and Dmitry Muratov call for more independent journalism to counter authoritarian government. You say, Musa Batwa is joining us. We started seeing demonstrations all over the country, and that tells you how people are suffering. If Akufo-Addo and Bawumia continue to push the draconian levy wahala to us, they witness demonstrations that has never happened in Ghana before. Nowhere in the world, and the COVID-19 situation, taxes are being imposed on businesses in order to collapse them. Nonetheless, they are using our taxes to hire luxurious jet to bath in the sky. Hashtag drop the e-levy. Okay, so this one, I think there are two messages. Papa Bisio says, Almighty God is really Ghana's God. If not for the 137 NDC members in Parliament, as against 137 of that MPP, and with Right Honourable Speaker Alban Sumana Kingsford Bagbin, this clueless, misled, wicked MPP government would have forced this daylight thievery of 1.75 e-levy down the throats of majority of suffering Ghanaians. Someone must tell Ken Ofori-Atta, as finance minister, he should know that little drops of water make a mighty ocean. On that note, given the 137 ambulances belonging to the state, to Enterprise Insurance, a private company to insure, because he has a link to it, that's ignoring state insurance, a government agency, shows how reckless he is and corrupt. That's chasing e-levy. Papa BCU sent that from here in Accra. Kojo Tumbuafo says, Sena, Dr. Valentine's take on the e-levy discussion is a little alarming. It seems once again, as many academics do, to share blame like distributing Piccadilly biscuits to kids at Christmas. The tax is fundamentally a shakedown by a government that have stolen or squandered all the massive resources they have assumed since coming back into power. The finance minister and his deputy have companies that have huge profits on every cent we borrow because they act as book runners for the paper that they use our sovereignty to collect. The same finance minister's insurance company insured those loans. Why are the academics quiet on that ugly conflict of interest situation? An example of why they are promised to use e-levy to reinvent civilization as Ghanaians. No, it is spurious and dishonest. As we speak, statutory funds like the road fund is capped, and the rest of the money is misused and abused. If you want to build roads, begin by repealing the capping and realignment law. They have capped GET fund, borrow against the excess, squander it, and then tell us that e-levy will build schools. That's from Kojochu Mwafo. Let me end with Idi Gideon, who says, why can't the MPP group in Parliament come to the realization of the fact that there are no more 169 as a majority against 106 as minority, like it was in the 7th Parliament, hence their disrespect and arrogance? The MPP should learn to forgo their ego, they disregard the abuse of power, and come to drawing board with the rest of Ghanaians gone at those days. Thank you very much for those messages. Keep them coming. We're talking about the e-levy. Mr. Mona will take his turn. He led a demonstration on this particular issue. Yes. No, we'll come around. So I think, thankfully, you are holding a book. So please put it down for me when I come around. So I'm sure he also has disagreements with things you say.
I'll mention him the more, so he should. So that you can respond to all. Sena, good morning to you and good morning to co-panelists and also the viewers. Felix has to explain why he does not take me as his elder brother. And I have to discipline him on some things that he has failed to do. He knows. First, let it be on record that the 1, 2, 3 republics or republican constitutions had or have always had one political party or one president. The first republic had only Kwame Nkrumah, no other political party. The second republic had only Edward Akufo-Addo. Is it Edward?
Yeah.
Yes, Edward Akufo-Addo as president, even though he was not elected publicly. But he was the president. Of course, Buzia was the prime minister who was publicly elected. The third republic also had President Lehman. And all these republics were truncated. The fourth republic obviously had the NDC and the MPP. Maybe we are seeking a fifth republic that will bring in other political parties to run, because the two political parties, obviously since 1993, have not lived up to the billing of the people of Ghana. Let me also state ab initio that when something is bad, there is nothing you can do to massage it, to make it beautiful. It is ugly, it's nasty, and you throw it out. So the 2022 budget must be thrown out. Aside the e-levy that has become the public talk, every other component of the budget, if critically analyzed, is ugly. You can have our president travel to Glasgow to attend the climate change conference. Whilst there, tidal waves had hit K2, Keta, Gilife, and all the places with such havoc, so much that the minister responsible for works and housing hurriedly organizes a press conference even without visiting the affected areas. And in that, he stated eloquently that he has been in discussion with the Minister for Finance and that the phase 2 of the defense project will continue and that some allocations will be made. In the 2022 budget, there is no allocation for the phase 2 of the project. And when this came to light, the Minister for Works and Housing come out to say that he was shocked and disappointed that upon his discussion with the Minister for Finance, he did not hear a mention of the Sea Defense Project. As one of the cosmetics and deceptional gimmicks of the Minister for Finance and maybe Akufo-Addo, he comes to say that he was readdressing and to give some concessions. And what did he put? 10 million Ghana cedis for feasibility studies to a hand-picked contractor. Which feasibility studies are you talking here? The feasibility studies on the Sea Defense Project has been completed several years ago. And construction of the defense wall had started. You abrogate it. In fact, it was said that by the original plan, by 2019, we should have completed the Sea Defense Project. So we wouldn't have been having the calamity that befell our people in K2, Keta, Glife, and all the communities. You failed to implement that. Now you bring in, as a concession, 10 million Ghana cedis, and to come and tell us that you are going to handpick the contractor. Thieves. This is daylight thievery. There is nothing good about this for you to say that no, let's not dismiss the entire budget. It is indeed right for us to dismiss the entire budget. All of us patronize, either willingly or unwillingly, government services. You will pay for electricity. Electricity will go back up by 15%. You patronize water, it will go up by 15%. Everything that government services that you have to go in, you have to pay 15% in addition. This, because they just said it, majority of us have not averted our minds to the fact that, look, this is a huge increase in every expenditure that we embark on. Even if you have to sit in STC, it is going by 15%. If you sit in the metro mass which is collapsing, you pay 15%. So every government service that you have to is going up. Doctor, you say we should sanitize this budget. It must be rejected outrightly. Now, I want to go to the issue of this 13% that we have been speaking about. I have great problems with what we use, the economics of averages we use as indication of the health of our economy. And I've said this time without number. It doesn't gel for we who own zero of our economy to be using GDP as a reference point of how our economy or how healthy our economy is doing. How do you use an average, a denominator that is of no benefit to you and does not reflect your circumstances to determine whether you are doing well or not? GDP. Take sector by sector of this economy and tell me which sector is owned by Ghanaians. Tell me one sector that Ghanaians can say that we are dominant. None. Even in the agric sector, we have Asianized or Chinanized the agricultural sector. If you want, just take a trip through Edra and go, and you see the Indian companies that have come to establish farms, the Chinese companies that have established large tracts of farms. How many Ghanaians can own the kind of farms that they are? So the food that is even produced here that we tout ourselves as, look, agriculture is our mainstay, we are not the producers of the bulk of the food. We have Chinanized agriculture. We have Asianized agriculture. How do you, even what you claim that we have comparative advantage, that comparative advantage is being dominated by persons outside, and so when it is produced here, they take it out, and indeed they bring things that they consume to come and produce here. They will not produce the cassava that we eat, neither will they produce the millet that we eat. They will produce things that are useful to their economy, and then we are now compelled to eat what they have produced from our economy. And so even agricultural sector, we don't own it. Now go to the telecom sector. We deliberately sold out Ghana Telecom with all its infrastructure. I think 700 million Today, we claim that government did not have a purpose and a need to be in the telecom providing services. After Akufo-Addo had come into office, don't forget that he's a shareholder in Tigo, which used to be Mobitel. Oslausu used to be the MD for Tigo Airtel, Tigo. Today, that Tigo Airtel is no more running as a profitable venture and is sinking because other companies have come to take over quickly in order to ensure that their shares stay. Government of Ghana rushes to go and procure that. Aside that, the telecom industry will own none. Glo is not owned by you. Vodafone is not owned by you. MTN is not owned by you. And so everything, and you know that every weekend planes come to sit here. They take dollars from our country going back. Meanwhile, whatever we make, either through Momo and interest on the Momo, either through the communication or data we use, all the money that is the services that they provide us is factored as part of your GDP. Soon after that GDP is calculated, it flies out of your country. You have nothing. How do you continue to use GDP as a measure of the health of your economy? Something is wrong with us. Even in the extractive sectors, the gold sector, you own less than 3%. Deliberately, you have sold all your shares in Ashanti Goldfields. In fact, it doesn't exist again. So in that, you just invite other companies to now come and extract. It is recorded that Ghana is the 6th largest producer of gold. And who owns that gold? Somebody owns that gold. You are interested in royalties. Even that royalties, you want to collateralize it. So, doctor, this concept of using GDP and now sitting here to say the African average is about 16%, I am not a student of that. Let us take control of the commanding heights. President Gaddafi showed the way. That from the days when only 3% of Libyan oil was in the hands of Libyans, and the rest was in the hands of Italians, the French and other people, he took over and ensured 77% of ownership, leading to a massive transformation of his country. Massive transformation of the African continent, that today Africa has its own satellites. Our communication doesn't go through other metropolis in order that we can make a call. There's nothing we cannot do. Under a champion, it was done. If you are a foreigner and you are coming to Ghana to invest, a Ghanaian must own 51% at a minimum, and you own 49%. That can be done so that we can have a full grasp of our economy. And at that time, you will not be sitting here talking about 13%. It means that you are participating in the revenue that is generated directly without just the taxes or royalties. This one too is difficult. I don't think so. So that is where we have the problem. Now let me move to the elephant in the room, the e-levy. You know, it's sickening. E-levy defies all the attributes of a good tax. E-levy, it defies all the attributes of a good tax. A good tax must be efficient in its collection. It must be simple in its collection. It must be equitable in its collection. It must show fairness and all that attributes. Tell me which of these attributes is met by e-levy. In terms of efficiency, you are creating a monster to steal our money. See, there is simplicity. E-levy is supposed to be collected by the telecos, not so? Nothing more. They collect and you just take your book. Even NCA can check their books and know how much they have collected, and the money simply transferred to government accounts. Why are you going to create a private company so that you pay them 241 million to collect something that is already collected? Thieves. If you stop stealing, this nation will be better. Because the mobile companies are collecting the money. You don't need to do anything. NCA can just sit there and say, okay, at the end of the month, let's see. Okay, so this number of people did these transactions. This is how much the total have come. And therefore, transfer that amount of money to government. I hope I'm speaking some sense here. Why is Ken Ofuriata creating another expenditure let? And so when you have thieves using every avenue to steal what belongs to us, you don't allow it to manifest. You have to reject it. So I have just spoken about the issue of all the attributes of a good tax, and you see that this does not fall in. Now, where is the fairness in this? Those who are in public space and they are already paying their taxes and have decided that they will contribute to those who are not able to survive in life, you are taxing them again. And so I demonstrated somewhere that my vehicle was down and we needed about 7,000 to put it back on road. So they went to Toyota Ghana to take an invoice of the things that is required. And when they brought the invoice, I am in my village in Sankana. The mechanic that I have given the vehicle to means that he sent me the bill. What I need to do is to remit or to send him money. If you have to send the 7,000 supposedly to the mechanic, you are going to pay 1.75% on it. That is 122.5 Ghana cedis. Now I will send it to him, but he is not the ultimate recipient of the money. He will now also have to take a transfer to Toyota Ghana, and he will also be charged 1.75%, another 122.5 Ghana cedis. So in all 250 Ghana cedis. Whether I go and cough it or I go and shit it, I must add to. If I don't want to do that, I have to go and carry the money in my pocket and take the risk and come and hand over to him. And he will also then take the trouble and take it to Toyota Ghana. So if that were to be my business capital would have declined by 250. And take note, if you are paying for a service and the person will also have to transfer the money to another person, when you pay, you think that the person will agree to share the burden of the 1.75. So you will be asked to pay another 1.75 on top so that they will be able to use that to do the transaction. Don't forget that the telecos will also charge 1%. So in effect 2.75. Where is the fairness as a tax attribute that you have brought into this? Now the repetitiveness of tax is actually the problem. And so look, you want to grow young entrepreneurs, which in my view is even wrong, because you are saying that you want to support this amount of money is going to support the young people so that they become entrepreneurs. You want to determine that Ghana should be an entrepreneurial nation, and the definition of entrepreneur, I don't know where it ends, because you want to be a journalist. Are you an entrepreneur? Somebody wants to be a medical doctor. Are you an entrepreneur? Somebody wants to be a civil engineer. Are you an entrepreneur? So for Ken Ofuriata and Nana Akufo-Addo to decide that they want to shift away all professions and make Ghana an entrepreneurial nation is virtually wrong. Those who want to be entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs. Those of us who want to be farmers, we may not be considered entrepreneurs. We are doing our farming. And those who want to do journalism and whatever profession, you want to be in the university to be doing research, to be giving us the needed information so we can plan ourselves. So you are being compelled to become an entrepreneur. That is not. And so let those who want to be entrepreneurs be entrepreneurs. Then you come and say that you want to shift away and make Ghana an entrepreneurial nation. Where have you seen this? Where have you seen this? And this is what you are doing. And I get wheezy about all these things because you are giving the impression that if we want to, and you know, you have run the country aground. The IMF and World Bank have already listed Ghana as a highly indebted poor country. And so, having run the country aground, the option that is left for you is to go to IMF. Who comes and say that if we don't collect e-levy, they will go to IMF. And who say that if you go to IMF, in order to come and fix a solution, a problem, that the people of Ghana will say that you're going to the IMF is wrong. In any case, we joined an IMF in 1957. If it was such a monster, we would not have joined it. We are a member of the IMF and the World Bank Group. You have come, you have not discontinued your membership of the IMF and World Bank Group. You understand? And then you are telling us because you deliberately came out to announce to Ghanaians that going to IMF is such a monstrous thing to do. Now you have come face to face to reality, and you don't want to go there so that the people of Ghana will say it's part of your basket of deceits that you have offered them. That is the challenge that confronts them. Nothing more. So it is an ego trip that they are embarking on with this e-levy. Now, we cannot talk like this without proffering some solutions to them. And I agree with you. We have to give them solutions, whether they will accept. All of us, including Kwame Pienim, have come out openly to say it is very regressive, it is repetitive, it defies every logic to embark on this e-levy journey. And so, Kwame Pienim says, tax exemptions alone over the years, on average, is about $1.6 billion per year. The e-levy is estimated to generate how much? About $1 million. Far less than what tax exemptions can give us. And who are the beneficiaries of the tax exemptions? The brother-in-laws of Akufo-Addo who want to build hotels, other friends and family members, including girlfriends. So if you cut tax exemptions in 2024 and 2022, it's evident that you'll be able to raise. This is not me. Those who do research and have the data, they have told us this. So that gap will be plugged by tax exemptions alone. The other one that you can use is what I describe as the exit tax. We have companies that have come in, and because you want to encourage them to come and produce in Ghana, you grant them tax holidays for 5-6 years. Not so. These companies over the years, as soon as they get to the 4th year, they start preparing their folding apps. They change the name of the company and they fold up, and they tell you that they are liquidating because they have not made profit and what have you. When they do that, you assume that they are gone. They resurface with new directors, but the same people in a different company into the same sector that they claim they were not making profit. So if the purpose of the tax holidays is to encourage the companies to become established, stable, so that they can produce, after the 5 years, if they decide to fold, what you then do is that you would have to do the calculation of the taxes for the last 5 years so that they can pay before they can fold up. Wouldn't that lead to the stay of most of these companies? Because they realize that no, once we have granted you this, it means that for 5 years you are supposed to become stabilized. After 5 years, you are supposed to now start to make income so we can tax you. So if it's getting to the 5th year you have to fold, then of course we will charge you for the 5 years. I'm sure that most of the companies will stop doing the smart accounting that they have engaged in over the past. That will leverage some resources for the government, and you know how much we lose in that direction. I have already said the issue of owning the commander highest of your economy. I am excited when President comes to announce one village, one dam. And of course, when he say one district, one factory. No private sector will go and start doing a factory in Sankana. Because there are many factors that influence the establishment of a factory, including proximity to the raw material, proximity to the market, cost of transportation, and many other things that will influence it. So you can go to Sankana and we can establish a tiger nut factory there. But what is the raw material base? And what is the size of the factory? So you can see that the tiger nuts you produce can actually go into 1 week of production. The cost of putting the plant there may not be realized. And so they will not do it. But if you are a government determined to do that, you, the government, then invest and establish the factory. Kwame Nkrumah started it, and that is how come you could see factories. And Kwame Nkrumah's factories, don't forget that majority of the factories either were just completed or were just at the completion stages. Because even the Akosombo Dam, that was supposed to power these factories, was commissioned in January 1966, and in February Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown, and Akosombo was supposed to power these factories. So the factories had not started producing anything when Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown, and our naivety said that less than a year after the factories were constructed, we were expecting them to become efficient and become profitable. What did we do? We sold all those things out on the basis that they were not efficient and profitable. In any case, how do you account for inefficiency? Through sale. If something is inefficient, you inject an efficiency. So if doctor is the person in charge and he's not delivering, simply remove doctor and bring Felix. Go out there and seek the expertise to come and fill the void. You don't sell off. But this is what we have done. So government, for instance, says that they are going to do planting for food and jobs. Government has no farm. Government wants to produce maybe 9,000 metric tons of maize. You want to have that. Government has no farm. So you are relying on private sector to generate 9,000 metric tons of maize. So if the private sector will not do it, what it means is that the government will be compelled to go take extra money and go and buy in order to come and support the food need. So government must have its own farms, at least to produce maybe 5,000 of the 9,000, and then allow the rest for the private sector, support them so they can contribute. You are not crowding out the private sector, but you are ensuring that you do not run. And so you see that all these programs they are running, they are not. Look, if you come to Greater Accra, how many factories do we have? In the Upper West region, of the 11 districts, we have 0 factory. In the Upper East region, there is 0 factory. In the Savannah region, there is 0 factory. And in the OT region, I cannot remember any factory. So you are seeing a concentration of the factories in the urban populated areas. Something is wrong with your policy, can't you think? And so for where I sit, we can continue on this path and expect that citizens will keep quiet. E-levy saps away our capital, and I have interacted with many Momo operators, and what they have told me, that just the mere mention that there is going to be further taxation, their market size has already shrunk. And all of you can go and do this research. This one, you can walk on the street and find out. Many people are beginning to run away. And I use a state attorney that I know very well, who said, and I quote on his Facebook wall, this one is public knowledge, that he has withdrawn all the money that used to be in his Momo wallet. He doesn't intend that his Momo will travel into 2022. And that those he used to support anytime they were in difficulty through Momo, anytime he is within their hood, they can come to him for support because he is not ready to pay any 1.75%. Is the government of Ghana listening? Will President Akufo-Addo listen? He must listen. And that is why we of the Justice for Ghana are on the streets. And we have manifested our first phase. We shall be manifesting further across the country until such a time that President Akufo-Addo realizes that e-levy is economic slavery.
Thank you. Thank you.
And my final point, which I side with Doctor, if you take most of the roads that have been constructed in this country, we have Ghanaian companies that if the government decide to support them, they have the capacity to become international companies. Marooms construct roads of such high quality. Usuya construct roads of such high quality. Fakol roads is not far from here. Fakol roads. They construct roads of high quality. You are not supporting them. In fact, when they decide that they will even use the little resources to go and invest in the contracts you have given them, when you go and take your Euro bonds, you come and take the Euro bonds and pay foreign road contractors. The money goes back, and these local contractors whose investment stays in the country, they employ more local people. You don't give them anything. Is it any wonder that after the Chinese constructed the Fufusu solar roads, have they not folded up? They are gone. Today, you are asking Leskin to go and repatch the roads. A Ghanaian contractor. If you had given this road and divided it to Usuya, to Marooms, and to Fakol roads, they would have done it, and they will be here with us. They will not run away. That is the way you can empower your own. When you talk about private sector, you don't go and bring private sector from outside and then collapse your own private sector and think that your nation will develop.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Mona. Let me do a few of your messages to bring this to a close. This lifetime legacy, which is Sena, those of us in the diaspora will find alternative way of sending money to Ghana. We say no to Momo tax. Watching live from Indiana in the USA. Stanley Agbade says if the e-levy will not even make up the projected revenue, then it is not worth implementing. The government should be smart to look out for an alternative to balance its budget deficit. It is stupidity to hold on to something which at the end of the day will not even benefit you. Sapeago says, Comrade Mona, you said the truth, as it is in terms of our false use of GDP to determine the health of our economy. As an economist, I reject the Bretton Woods institution's reference to GDP as a parameter of economic growth. It's appropriate to use to determine the economic growth of industrialized economies, but not ours. That's wholly owned by TNCs. Rather, we use NDP, net domestic product, that is GDP less transfer payments. The value of our NDP will capture the precise value of our domestic product. Ishak Hussein says big regards to all panelists, especially Comrade Mona. A few more of your messages. Kelly Amos Asante is complimenting the panel. Sena, today your panelists are very great and they need to be brought back with comic path. Adam Samid, Junior Rollins. Yes, I say good morning to us. A good morning to Phyllis Kwachofosu that is watching us live from Wa in the Upper West region. Odaseni, I'm going to Sena, I salute your panelists. I hope whoever has something to do with MPP is watching this program attentively, or you are refusing to accept the facts. Adam Mohamed said the MPP government and President Nana-Addo are 419. The hardship in the country is too much. That's why Ghanaians are crying, calling for ex-President John Mahama. This is Monday William Jikuno says, Senator Dr. Valentin Mensah made my day. I don't know, we still have good people who thinks about the country. Bring him to the program often. Lava Bing says, Senator, please, Man African TV should invite Baumia to come and answer questions. He was behaving opposite to what he told Ghanaians when they were in opposition in 2016. Sam Banfo wants to know about the impersonation saga of Adwoa Safo. Is the matter prematurely dead? Abraham DC said she didn't apply makeup on the day. So if you catch Adwoa Safo today and you rinse her face, you see the woman you saw in Parliament. That's Abraham DC.
Very interesting analysis. Michael Diame says, I'm listening to you live from home. Keep the fire burning. Akufo-Addo government should stop deceiving the good people of Ghana. For he says 20% to Akufo-Addo is excellent too, because he's the only lawyer with no classmates and certificates. Albert says, I think you have to advise the president to stop using the public purse anyhow. The purse is seriously bleeding, more especially for the presidential jet. This name, Ryo Min-ho, sounds South Korean. This is time for us to start asking our government, where is the money? I want to state that what you guys see as nothing will soon crash the country. Eric Kokusepani says, good morning. The finance minister looks docile and innocent, but a ferocious hyena with Bible quoting mouth to seal and devour. Mande William Jikuno is joining us, says this MPP Nanado government lacks ideas. All what they know is loot and share. If NDC MPs go to bed with them, they are going to destroy NDC party forever. They should be careful. Elizabeth Joyce Akolo says the minority should be able to recover lost oil money or lost oil revenue of over $800 million or cedis. Ghanaians are not going to forgive you if you fail to recover that money. Benjamin Kwame Frimpong says instead of giving that advice to the government, you chose to form a power COVID response team. How did that fruitless endeavor go? You say, says paying interest on your loans. Mahama administration is also part of the expenditure of this incumbent government. Hope you understand that too. Kwesi Asiedu says all the taxes Ghanaians didn't reject, even COVID levies, are paid by some people who have not been vaccinated. So when people say they don't like the e-levy, why still impose it? Godwin Ajaja says, let the teacher union leaders know that teachers of today are not the same as yesteryears. We will come after them. William Agbeniga says, the ultimate aim is to collateralize this e-levy and borrow heavily against it. Abdullah Abbas, the highest revenue raised by the government is 55 billion. How can you raise 100 billion revenue in the next year? Nana Frimpong says, excellent submission by Honorable Felix. This government is putting all of us at risk. Okulu Joseph says, I don't even Ken and Baumia at all. It's not easy advising a boss who graduated with third class in economics. Hey. Albert Wong says, and I cannot fathom how any government can manage its finances responsibly without curtailing its expenditure. Fantastic discussion this morning. Real Ghana, budget impasse. MPP runs away again as majority group boycotts 20-member resolution committee. He says that one. Joel Ampa says, thank you, Bernard. God bless you, Ghana. God bless you. Ghana loves you so much. Watch you live from the UK. So Fransako says, we have to contribute for the president to bath in the air. Come again. Kwesi Asiedu says, why is this man making it look like the e-levy is going to solve all of the reckless spending of government? Okay. This one is from Isahak Abbas, says, I admire your panelists. This man in it's not called in spectacles and white is fantastic, and Phyllis himself, he called it space. Yes. Rebecca Gay says, if this kind of administration is not a disaster, how can the comeback of JM be? Mr. Man, rethink why. Benjamin Gunda says, and I don't know how the people of Bernard Mona Sankana should do to, okay, I think he wants to say, I don't know what they need to do to elect him as MP. He deserves to be in parliament. He's tried. I don't know whether he has plans to try again. I think you are relatively younger compared to some people in parliament. Since Anyamle says teachers have become like
parliament and I've suffered rejection, so I think I'm tired. No. It is not the party that makes me. Probably if I had joined those parties, I would have been as compromised as.
Let me end with teachers have become like dormants in Ghana. No one is there to speak for teachers. Unfortunately, I have about 15 minutes to go, so I don't know how I can put two topics into one, which means you have to be very brief. Very brief.
There are a few issues that there were aspects of Dr. Valentine's submissions that I disagreed with. You see, it is no longer fashionable or tenable to lump all politicians and parties together and paint them with the same brush over the economic malaise we are witnessing. There's a reason why parties are voted for and others are rejected. And you see, when it comes to this government, they are by and large being measured by the measuring rod that they themselves fashioned out when they were in opposition. They made clear and definitive pronouncements on where they stood on the key issues regarding the management of the economy. They were clear on what they stood for when it came to borrowing. They were clear on taxation. They were clear on general economic management. If even we were to ignore the rhetoric, what they said on political platforms, you cannot ignore the commitments they made in their manifesto, which is a binding document. If you check page 13 of the 2016 manifesto, they were clear. They said they will grow the economy above 10% over the 4-year period that they were going to be in power between 2017 and 2021. That has not been achieved. So people can legitimately isolate the MPP government led by President Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia for criticism on that. On taxation, they were express. They said they will reduce taxation. I just showed you that they've introduced over 22 new taxes, including the 3 proposed taxes that we are haggling about currently in Ghana. They said that they would maintain fiscal discipline. And the way that you assess whether there's fiscal discipline is to look at your deficits and your primary balance. The deficit for 2020, the reason why we are in this hole, was 15.6%, the biggest in our contemporary history as a country. The primary balance, which is essentially your deficit minus your interest payments, was 8.8%, the biggest in contemporary Ghanaian history. So the figures suggest that they have not maintained fiscal discipline. And then they said they will make the cost of business low. Gupta is crying that because of the reversal of the benchmark value discounts, the cost of their business is going to go up because import duty is going to go up. So on all the key issues and the promises they made, they have failed to deliver. On the exchange rate, Dr. Bawumia was clear. He said that if the fundamentals of the economy are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. When they came to power, the exchange rate was just around 4 cedis. Today, only yesterday, I did a transaction. It is 6.5 cedis. So the exchange rate has exposed the weakness of the fundamentals of the economy. And there is no wiggle room. There is no other way to assess it than to say so. When our debt was at 120 billion, Dr. Bawumia pilloried the NDC administration. He said it was a lazy man's approach to economic management to borrow. Indeed, there were people in the MPP who said that if all that it took to manage an economy was taxing people and borrowing, then their 18-year-old children could manage the economy better. So people like this, when they come into power and they perform abysmally, diametrically opposite to what they promised, deserve condemnation. Also, when you impose a tax on people and it is pinching, they have the right to criticize you. It is not President Mahama or the NDC that impose a 1.75% levy. So you cannot hold the NDC accountable together with the MPP on this matter. And look at President Akufo-Addo's history. Indeed, if for nothing at all, his own political history suggests that he deserves no sympathy when it comes to the imposition of taxation. He led perhaps the biggest demonstration under the Fourth Republic in 1995, May 11th, when the then government wanted to introduce VAT, taxation. And indeed, the very arguments people are making today against the e-levy were the arguments that Akufo-Addo made against VAT. So that alone is sufficient reason to reject the tax. He must be held by the very principles that he espoused. So I disagree with those who seek to look at this matter through the prism of collective blame. You cannot blame the NDC together with the MPP for this mess. It is not the NDC that added 220 billion Ghana cedis to our public debt. The NDC has not suggested that fees and charges being increased by 15%. It is not the NDC that has reversed benchmark value discounts. It is not the NDC that is spending recklessly. Check what we did with the monies that we borrowed. It is there for everybody to see, sector by sector, unmatched, unparalleled. When we were building secondary schools, they were mocking us. Today, how many secondary schools have they built? They promised you Agenda 111. They promised to build you 88 hospitals within 12 months. And those 12 months elapsed in July 2021. Not one was built. So I am not able to accept any collective blame in this matter. The blame must be heaped squarely and placed at the doorstep of the head of the economic management team, Dr. Bawumia. Because in opposition, they told us that when it comes to the economy, he was the arrow man. He made all the noise about the economy. So today the economy is in shambles, such that even foreign investors don't want to deal with us. It is Bawumia who is to be blamed, not Bernard Mona, not Mr. Yaboy, not Dr. Valentine, not myself, not you. Not the NDC, not the CPP, not the PNC, but the new patriotic party led by President Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia. That is where, and you see, we must come to a point as citizens where we demand performance from governments. The moment you seek to blame somebody else apart from government, you provide an excuse for them to continue to misconduct themselves in power. Look at the attitude of the president. Look at the rampant corruption that we are witnessing. Look, the finance minister, his company is called Data Bank. As finance minister, he has picked his own company to be a book runner. In other words, advise him on the issuance of bonds. And whenever he issues bonds, he makes a profit for himself. That is corrupt because it is called nepotism. Basically using your office to profit. It is not allowable. This will not happen in any civilized jurisdiction. Yet it is happening in Ghana. His company is insuring loans that Ghana gets. Government projects that he, the finance minister, pays for are insured by his own insurance company. How do you do this and expect that people will appreciate it when you come and increase taxation? Look at the way they are spending our monies. Just look at the president. Look at his lifestyle. Look at the ostentation. When people are crying and saying that we have a presidential jet which we bought for $40 million in 2010, use it. He says no, I will use a bigger aircraft. Sometimes when he travels for one trip, we spend as much as 2.5 million Ghana cedis financing that aircraft hire alone. How can you behave this way and convince people to pay more taxes when they are already paying so much? Okay. So I don't think that we should ever allow a narrative that seeks to blame everybody or anybody else apart from the government that is responsible for taking the decisions that have brought them here. It is not the first time that we've gone for it. We went for elections in 2016. When we finished that election, our deficit was 6.1%, even with all the difficulties that we had in that year. You go for elections in 2020 and you come up with 15.6%. You take a deliberate decision to spend beyond your means so that you will procure elections. And then when you go into difficulty, you say we should blame everybody else apart from yourself. It is not a terrible proposition, with the greatest respect to Dr. Valentine. Okay,
yes. Doc, I'll come to you because someone sent me a message. Says, I appreciate Doc's passion for the country's development, and that is where I also stand. But sometimes, the equalization argument does not help. Yes, none of the parties have performed to the full expectation of the people, but whoever is sincere to himself will acknowledge that one has developed the country much better than the other. As a researcher, you will agree with me that if you are putting up a family house, got it to a certain level, travel for 4 years, then your brother who was to continue with the project abandoned it and even sold some of the materials, obviously the house cannot be completed. In that case, would you accept to share the blame for your brother's mismanagement of the project, knowing how much you have put in before handing over to him? That's from Komla Genya. Doc.
I think, and Bernard, the only thing is that Bernard, I wish I could have more time for Bernard. But then next time, if there's an opportunity to yes. Okay, so firstly, I would like to start with Bernard's argument on the gross domestic product. Okay. We are not talking about ownership. Mm-hmm. You see, this argument was shot down by President Rawlings in 1984 or 5, when he wanted to join, let IMF come and intervene in our economic situation. He said that we shouldn't talk about who owns what. That one, economics, it's not important. I'm sure, Bernard, you've done economics. You know what we call factors of production. That the capital is called rent and then income. If somebody is producing in your house and renting from you, the person will pay you rent. If somebody has invested in your country, it's your responsibility to tax the person. So if you've given the person a lot of exemption and you're allowing the person to take the money away, it doesn't change the economic situation of allowing production in your country. And that is what we always revert to, and then we get the argument wrong. Production is not ownership. And that one, you can go anywhere and argue. Whatever you produce is what is taxed. So when we say tax against production, we are not saying tax against what Ghanaians produced. The whole basket that was produced on our land is what we are taxing. It is after that we allow the owners to take the money away. If you do not tax them and you allow them to take the money away, it's our problem. And this is the problem I'm talking about. You see, you're all talking about conflict of interest and other things. You go to your constitution, it's porous when it comes to prevention of conflict of interest. That is why I put the two of you together. Since 1993, and you guys have come and gone. Nothing has been done about it. You are talking about data bank and others. And this could, if the constitution was amended and ensure that nobody, before you come to power, we check all your companies and constantly monitor all the transactions that you enter into, whether it has something to do with your company. Even your contributor, Sena, your contributor was on that as well. He talked about conflict of interest. If we are not doing anything about it, do we expect God to come and solve it for us? We, the two parties, you have ruled us for 30 years. Solve that problem, Felix. So that has to be solved.
The one that needs to solve is
not me. I don't have the power to do it.
So that is why,
if it doesn't solve it, then
that's the only reason why I put you together. But then, apart from Bernard, we also talk about the exchange rate, which today is 6.07.
Oh, it's 6.05.
But then in your submission before, you said 6.5.
Yes.
It's 6.5.
So 6.05.
No.
It's
6.5.
And even higher.
It's 6.5. You should just check now.
No, you see, the bank. No. When you go to the Forest Bureau today,
please,
you go to the bank today.
Let me help you, fellas.
Yeah, you are the financial analyst.
Not the Forest Bureau.
Exactly.
If you go to the banks and you want dollars to pay for your bills externally,
6.5.
the banks are asking for 6.5 and beyond.
Exactly.
And BOG has started the rate around 5.9.
What is not realistic?
And that is
so that they will keep our debt low.
Yes.
That's all.
I've never used BOG.
But it's 6.5.
I use the international rate, and that is where, when you are buying, that is how you be quoted. See, we have Oanda and other institutions that give you the fair exchange rate. So if anybody talks to you about exchange rate, that is where you should go, and you get the average for buy and sell. And now he was talking about 6.05 or 6.8. It's 6.07. So it cannot be 6.5. Maybe you see when
you are not able,
let me explain the exchange rate.
To get
let me explain
6.05 anywhere.
Let me explain how we arrive at exchange rates. They are average rates on the day. The money is bought and sold by so many. Pardon?
When we leave here, we'll go to the nearest show. Then I hope that we can.
Yes. So that is the average of the transactions on the day. That so if you go and transact the rate at 7 cedis, you can't come and say that the exchange rate is 7. A lot of people deal in the currency on that day, and the average is what is used as the exchange rate. Like I told you, if you go to Rwanda or any international website for exchange rate, it's 6.07 today. Okay, so no, I'm not siding for the government, but whenever we have discussions, we have to stick to the reality. And as I told you, where I went, the remotest area, they listen to you. So it's so important that we get it right. Yes.
Okay.
And that's what I saw, that most of the places I went, Pan Africa, the Watch Pan Africa. So
most of the places you go, if you tell them it's 6.07, they will get it for 6.07 there.
Yes.
So how would they believe what you are saying?
You see, that's why I explained. That is why I explained that it's an average rate.
Okay.
It's not per transaction. It's an average rate. And the same way that Bernard was fighting with me or arguing with me on the GDP.
Okay.
The GDP.
Well, look, let me move on to me. But if you check even from Western Union,
yes,
they are $1. They are giving you 5.39.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine you are getting
5.39.
Yes, 5.39.
When they are buying from you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will address some few issues because I think that people who probably call themselves economists and all that must show higher understanding of situations that we have in this country than just mere class one playing with class one economic theories and all that, which they cannot even hold even onto even. Look, the issue with our GDP, yes, it doesn't matter whether we own it or we do not own it. What matters is that what do you get out of the GDP you produce? Because the GDP is just your produce. You have not sold it. What comes out of your GDP will tell you the efficiency of your GDP. So the rate we are mentioning shows that our GDP is not efficient. Now the worst case scenario is this. Your GDP is backed by debt. So whatever you produce out of your GDP and the gains that comes out of what you sold, you must be able to match it squarely with those debt servicing. If the GDP is not backed by debt, that is fine. The roads that are constructed, we bought those roads with debt. Whatever was spent here in Ghana is part of our GDP computations. At the end of the day, is the road going to produce or save us enough revenue for us to pay for those debts? No. So this is the issue with the GDP. Mind you, there are different ways of computing GDP. The Americans do it purely on income, which I will suggest that this is the path Ghana should take. The second thing is with power, and economics. And it has played out here. Doc says 6.0 to average rate, whatever it is. You see, at the end of the day, it is about demand and supply. Quote whatever rate. BOG is quoting 5.9. Go to the market. If you demand dollars, you are not going to get 6.9. 5.9. Now, if there is anybody in this country who has dollars, Doc here, if Doc has dollars today, Doc is not willing to sell his dollars at 5.9. But what do? Power believes that it is stronger than the force of economics, and therefore they will always intervene. The labor unions, after power has intervened, they will also feel that we also have power, so we will intervene. So we intervene, and then prices are pushed down. Something happens. But the effects of economic force can never be changed. What you go out there to buy dollars for, you will still go out there to buy it for that. Because that is the price people are willing to part away with their dollars. Now, what is killing businesses? Why businesses will run away from this country? It's the poor management of our currency. Why people are not saving in this country? It is because of the poor management of our currency. A currency that is backed by nothing cannot move across space. And you have people there who claim to have gone to the best of schools to study economics. Damn, I think I need to open economic school for them.
Thank you. Comrade.
The savings. The savings mean that you got it wrong. No, savings is not.
Well, comrade,
it depends. Let me just solve this.
Yes, it doesn't.
You know, if I put my CD in the bank, and with the space of time, I will lose so much value. Even with the interest I'm supposed to earn, will not compensate with what I will lose. So that by the time I have a use for the money, the value of the money has deteriorated so much. That will push me to actually move away from savings and probably use the money for something else. That is why the savings, with what is going on now, check our broad money, every figure has gone down drastically.
Okay.
We were looking at 93 billion from the beginning of 2021. It is down to about 50 something billion in terms of broad money, and that is money in circulation.
Comment.
Okay. You go. Yes, the time.
That doctor would choose to use 1984 and Rawlins's pronouncement as a basis for which ownership doesn't matter. It's really scary. What has been the state of our economy by the Rawlins experiment of the structural adjustment program and the economic recovery programs that we have had? It ran us into a ditch because we let out our state ownership. We created a caricature called the Divestiture Implementation Committee, selling of state assets because we claimed that it was not the duty of government to invest in businesses. And so we sold off everything, including in Sawam Canary, including part of STC, which sale has faded. That today, even Ghana Telecom we sold, our airline we sold. And so you are selling in order that you can rent out. And then you can get rent when you can actually take direct revenue from it. And you sit here and know very well that no country under the sun has used taxation as the basis for development. Taxation cannot lead you to development. No country has taxed itself to development. You use taxes to do many things. You can use taxation to correct certain defects in the economy. And that is why you impose import duties. Sometimes you impose it either in retaliation or you impose it in order to augment domestic production, so that your local production will come at par or be cheaper than the imported ones. So there will be production, because there is much more merit in production than in doing taxation. So the issue of taxation can be debated and debated. But I just want to conclude on these two notes. The drivers are agitating. Why? Because so much taxes have been piled on fuel prices. This is a country where we have the Tema oil refinery, and we don't refine our own crude. Something is wrong with us mentally. You cannot calibrate the Tema oil refinery to take at least your 13% share of oil and process it or refine it here. So you continue to import crude and come and process it here. Something is wrong. That is one. And therefore the prices of fuel will continue to increase because you are relying on what it comes in. So everything that we refine petroleum that we consume here, it means we have imported. That leaves the cost of the petroleum high, and you keep adding taxes. And don't forget that petroleum products have an inelastic demand. The fuel that you take from my home to this place, you have to use the same quantity, even depending on the age of your car. You cannot move from your house to your office with less fuel. You have to consume the same. And so when they pile other taxes, levies, and what have you, it increases the cost. Yet you must consume, because if you don't do that, you can't get to your destination and you can't get back to where you are coming from. And therefore, because of the inelastic nature of the demand, government continue to pile taxes. That is lazy, and that is why our drivers are on the street. This is one that kills me. Teachers are paying for tools that they will use. It will not be long. They will be asked to pay for chalk. Because the laptops, the teachers didn't tell you they want laptops. You decided that laptops will aid in the teaching and learning. So it becomes a tool.
Maybe one small intervention. I spoke to the General Secretary of NAGRAT. He said the proposal came from them. Government did not have
wait, let me tell you something. And so if we make a proposal that laptop is a tool to aid our teaching, you are telling me that if the military today proposes that they need what's the SGM, the other gun, you tell them that they should contribute a percentage to buying it and keeping it. You understand? Then the worst of all is that you are going to use their income directly to pay part of it, and then you give the impression that government is going to pay 70%. That 70% is not paid by government, but is being paid by the tier 2 of their contribution. Go and check the records. So invariably, you are asking teachers to buy their own working tools to go into the classroom to teach, and they are paying for it. In any case, if I want to buy a laptop and government want to assist me to buy a laptop, and government makes it compulsory that every teacher should have a laptop, government can say, we are providing you with this amount, take it and go and buy a laptop of your choice, but we put certain programs on it so that you'll be able to impact on the people. You give loans to MPs. No, so they choose the kind of vehicles they want to buy. When it comes to teachers, you go and buy the laptops that they claim that they are so. Let me stop the use of that word. But obviously, a government takes advantage to secure somebody, private contractor, to do everything because they want to steal from us. That is the system that we are running today.
Okay. Well, so anyway, I think that.
Said something about government. For me, I agree with that. Government have no business doing business, but government have every business in understanding the factors of production to influence it to our own advantage.
Yeah.
Failure to do that, you have no business being at the Flagstaff House, just like Nana Akufo.
Well, let me read this from Dr. Percy, who says, Sena, this is to my friend Bernard. Those who run our neo-colony, primarily for the benefit of foreign interest, will remain fixated on GDP. That way, they can mask the pittance that comes to Ghanaians. Let's ask what our GNI, gross national income, is. That way, we'll make some progress. That's from Dr. David Percy.
I thought he was an agronomist. Now he's moved to the realm of economics.
That is anyway. But let me announce that on this coming Saturday, the Saturday after this one, Alhaji and Alhaji will be in the premises of Pan-African Television. This is a studio. In the premises, you are allowed to come in and be an audience. So you don't have to sit at home. We'll provide a seat for you. You sit and watch as the program goes on. And you have the opportunity, instead of sending me a message and sitting at home. In fact, I think I'll ban messages on that day. You can come here. We'll give you the mic. You say it yourself. So you have the opportunity of commenting as the show goes on. As you can see, there was... Yeah, Pan-African Television. Yes. We'll find space. We'll find space. You are discouraging the people. Help me.
Well, me, I know your space.
I know.
To take this one too.
No, we have done it over and over again.
I know.
We've done it a couple of times.
At least we've taken it out of Accra.
They need the space. Well, we will consider that the next time. But this Saturday, that's what we are doing. Well, he's a part to be around. He is committed to being here. ABF Sena is also joining. We'll be announcing the rest of the panel as we plan the show. But thank you very much, and we are hoping to see you on the 18th. When you are coming, those of you who are always asking, where is Mr. Pratt? bring him a Christmas gift to appreciate him. He's not here, so he cannot refuse it. I can say anything I want. I can even say that he prefers goats. He has nothing to say. He is outside. So, but
I just
well, let me say a good afternoon to him, and join us same time next week. But a big thank you to Comrade Mona, who is the convener for Justice for Ghana, for joining us. A big thank you to Nia Boyanan, who is a financial analyst. A big thank you to Dr. Valentin Mensah, who is a political economist, and Phyllis Kwachofosu, who is a former Deputy Minister for Communication and an aide to former President John Dramani Mahama, joined us this morning. Thank you very much for doing the listening and for sharing your thoughts with us. And a big thank you to our affiliate stations across the country. A big thank you to Ahunto 92.3 FM particularly. My name is Sena Nombo, and from Tijani, Edem, and the rest of the crew here, we say a big thank you to you. Join us same time next week. This time around, you present in the premises.
Well, it is obvious that Alhaji has no size. It has become the most popular talk show in this country and has reigned for more than 10 years. Next week, on the 18th of December, we will take the program to another level. On the premises of Pan-African Television, we invite all of our patrons and general public to participate directly in Alhaji and Alhaji. Come, listen to the various contributors and make your own comments known on the state of the economy, working parliament, everything, international relations and everything. Please join us next week Saturday, the 18th of December on the Alhaji and Alhaji talk show. Come with your friends to join this discussion at the premises on African Television at Abilimbe. Join us in discussing the issues of our time.
People into the land of freedom. He's the Redeemer